Everyone, thank you so much for joining us on Wavedash 5. We have 6 people here, 2 Swedes, 2 Germans, 2 Brits, 2 Aryas, and 1 dinosaur. So it's a real pleasure to have all of you here. Like, if you guys don't know who Dinosaur is, by the way, he's a pillar of the UK community and basically taught me everything I know about Tekken. So a lot of the words that are coming out of my mouth when I do these guides written by Dinosaur. So, I mean, I'll just let you introduce yourself a bit.
So thanks very much. That's very kind, and glad to be here. So, I'm a pretty old school Tekken player. So I started in competitive sense back in Tekken Tag 1. And I played pretty much exclusive. I learned the game pretty much exclusively in the arcades. I didn't even have a console for the first kind of few years that I played the game, I think. And so I learned in Tekken Tag and then came up through Tekken 4. I first got like quote unquote good and started to do okay in tournaments in Tekken 5, where I played Raven, and then went through a bunch of other characters throughout sort of the Tekken series, but I settled on Bryan in Tekken 6, and I've pretty much just mained him since. That's sort of like my potted Tekken history.
Awesome. Cheers, man. Cool. And yeah, your Bryan is pretty terrifying to play against. I mean, one mistake and Adrian is shaking his head right now.
I mean, he's being so humble. Didn't he beat Kakoma in in the UK, right? What's the tournament's name? Is it Versus Fighting?
Versus Fighting, 2019.
That was incredible. Like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Legend.
So we have Sephi Black, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you also to be here again.
Wonderful. And legendary Mihawk. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me once again. It's going to be a pleasure.
This dickhead is the one and only Frame Whisperer.
It's the highlight of my week, man.
And of course, the main man, Sui. Thank you as ever, guys.
My pleasure. My pleasure as always.
All right. So we have a bunch of stuff to talk about today. And since there are 6 people, I'm going to try and I'm not going to probably talk as much as I usually do. I'm just going to try and moderate and maybe keep things going because, you guys are all much better Tekken players than I. So the first topic we're going to get into is, if we're going to get our PowerPoints out, is episode 5. Is Tekken too unapproachable? And this is going off Lefen's criticisms of the game. He made a video about this, which Main Man responded to in his own video. And I guess his main criticism of the game is that there's just too much. There's too much bloat, too many gimmicks, too many moves, too many characters. And this all rewards legacy skill and or knowledge too much, making it a very uneven playing field, making it just too hard, basically, for new players. And on top of this, there's no tutorial to help ease new players in. And because of all this, the vast majority of matches in Tekken, for the vast majority of players, aren't rooted in fundamentals. They're mostly about gimmicks, save for the highest level, which is like 0.0001%. And it's just too time-consuming to get to this level, literally years. So let's just unpack that a bit and talk about it. I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, do you think Tekken is too bloated?
Yes, with a qualified, maybe a qualified yes. So I think when we think about the game and difficulty of getting into it, there's sort of 3 areas to think of. There's the sort of underlying mechanics, the stuff that then goes into the underlying mechanics, moves are kind of basically built upon the underlying mechanics, there's a framework which you then build on with moves, and there's the resources that you use to learn the game. And we can all universally agree that the resources to learn the game in-game are completely terrible. That's sort of a given. If we look at the game itself, I think the mechanics of the game have been changed sometimes in ways which have been designed to they've been designed to cater to newer players, but the changes haven't necessarily been in ways which have made sense in a lot of ways. And they don't, if you think about things like the throw system, for example, right? Throws have been made much easier in Tekken 7 to escape, and they've made, universal throws can now be broken with 1 or 2 inputs. This has been done to make the game easier, but it makes the game make a lot less sense. Because it's the game, people will say you should use throws as mix-ups. In almost every game, you use throws as mix-ups. But then the game says to you, there's different throws, and then it says, but they don't really mean anything apart from command throws. And then you get to another level where it will say, actually, even with command throws, these are just gated behind a reaction barrier, and you should be able to break them every time. And then it will say, but then there's these throws, there's giant swing and shining wizard and multi throws, where they look like that, but they have their own breaks. And then they'll say, and here's back turn throws. These look the same, but you can have the 1 or 2 option, but you can break either one of them, unless you're playing Feng or Huang. And so they've decided to make something easier for new players, but it has made it a lot less intuitive. Because in a lot of other games, you just say, here's a throw, you do it, and that will basically stay the same as you learn the game throughout. Whereas Tekken, you end up going down a number of different routes and they've done this, I think, to compensate for the fact that the game has a million moves in it. One of the reasons why I think Tekken Tag 2 was a very hard game for a lot of people is that it had a million moves and was very punishing, and it also had pretty hard throws to break. At least offline. Online, they were very easy. But and they just decided, we have to make a choice between either move lists or universalized mix-up mechanics. And they were just well, we just need to get rid of the throws mostly. These need to go, because every character has huge amounts of moves, and they couldn't have giant amounts of moves and an easy damaging throw mix-up game for everyone to have as well. So in a lot of ways, the amount of stuff, the moves that they've put onto the framework, they've kind of forced simplifications in the mechanics which don't necessarily always make all that much sense. And so this is the thing, is that you will constantly have to be learning, not necessarily just learning things in Tekken, you will have to be unlearning things. There will be something you will learn at one level, you'll reach the next level, and people be like, oh yeah, the exception is actually it's here. So yeah, and I think that is basically because every character has been built on and built on and built on and built on, and it's very hard and they're just very, very hard to process now.
Sorry for the crying in the background. It will stop pretty soon. Sorry.
It's okay.
Didn't agree with what Phil had to say there.
No, he hates Phil. He loves Phil. I speak so highly of Phil every day. A great point. I just wanted to say, as he said, the characters have been built upon over many titles. If you take by itself in a vacuum Tekken 3 King's move list, it's very intimidating. And when you take his Tekken 7 move list, and it suddenly looks like a proper book. It's a novel, and it's just, I can understand people feel it's bloated, intimidating. And I think what Leffen meant was that, for example, you take chess, you can learn the rules of chess in half an hour if you're pretty gifted. And then what happens is that after half an hour, you're using your own creativity to get into the actual game, do some proper strategy, work the rules of a game. And I think what Leffen meant was that in Tekken, like the rules never end. You're always learning rules. And I think if you have chess here, I guess Tekken is the extreme on the other end, and maybe Leffen is more happy being somewhere in the middle, where there is some knowledge to take in and rules, but it's not like a mountain to climb. So I completely agree with him, but it's so easy to argue the other side, to just say that that's what makes Tekken interesting, because we have a lot of games who are simpler, and Tekken kind of stands out with vast move lists. It gives it identity, and also the backdash. There's been some criticism that it's too hard to do, and part of me agrees. It holds people back. Something as simple as retreating is very difficult for a beginner to do. It takes a lot of work, but at the same time, it's so beautiful to see that I have spent a lot of time with this game. I move backwards pretty well, and then you see someone like JDCR move twice as fast as me, because he's just better at it. And you don't really see that in games like Street Fighter, where everyone is just mashing back and everyone retreats the same speed. Whereas in Tekken, you can actually see skill in a completely different way, in how quickly someone retreats or how knowledgeable someone is in a specific matchup. Like, good anti-Xiaoyu is very hard to acquire. So when someone has acquired it, it's just beautiful to watch, because there's so much knowledge that goes into it. So you can see a skill. What's it called? Like a God, I'm trying to find the English word here. I hate when this happens. The skill ceiling. It's so high in Tekken that you can, individually just spot all of these advances people have made. Desperately trying to make a point here, but yeah, I hope that was something at least. I'm just saying it's so nice to see in Tekken when someone has actually mastered a specific matchup or a specific technique, because you just know how much goes into that. That it's very rewarding because it's so hard.
Okay. I want to add, do you think it's a good idea for such a fundamental element of the game, which is movement, to be tied to execution?
It's like I want to argue both sides. In one way, I feel it's way too hard in Tekken when friends of mine try to get into the game and they're like, I can't learn all the matchups, and I'm like, no, you can't. That's going to take a lot of time. You play a few hours per week. It's going to take years at this pace. So learn to get good movement so you at least can get away from trouble every once in a while. And they're like, okay, how do I do that? I explain, and they're like, they simply cannot do it. Obviously, it's very, very hard. And that to me it's honestly, when you want to be reasonable about it, it is a bit dumb. It's literally the most basic approach to fighting. Just back away. Being able to retreat when you're being, pitbull. But it's so hard to do in Tekken. So that to me is a bit stupid, to be honest. But at the same time, the point still stands when I said that it is kind of beautiful to watch people who have acquired a very, very clean backdash, and they've earned it. But should something as basic as retreating be that hard? I don't know.
I think if we see it from Tekken, from Leffen's side, he knows different games like Super Smash Bros. Melee, Dragon Ball Fighters. So he knows
King of Fighters, yeah.
Marvel. King of Fighters as well.
Multi-game player, yeah.
Yeah, he's in Melee, as far as I know. He won EVO 2 years ago.
One of the best.
Yeah, one of the best players in the world. And what I watched a bit of Melee and learned that as well. And I know in Melee, movement is so important.
Exactly.
That is also way, compared to Tekken, in my opinion, it's also really, really hard and not easy to manage. And you can see the difference from high skill players and casual players. That movement is really important in Melee. And but the thing is, if you have good movement in Melee, it doesn't make you good. Similar as in Tekken, some people have really good movement, but they are not good in the game. there's a difference still between movement and overall usage of the movement. Just because you know how to do it or having the good execution doesn't make you a good player. You need to implement it in your game plan and use it in a wise way to be successful and to get the win. And I think he knows how difficult it can be to have high execution in gameplays. Like Dragon Ball FighterZ is also not that, I wouldn't say, it's also execution heavy by his combos and movement settings like dash in, jump in, dash in, and whatever you like that. I'd like to call that, but it's not easy to move overall in other games. But it doesn't make you especially good if you're just specialized.
Yeah. I mean, I was really excited when I heard Leffen was getting into Tekken because the core of both Melee and Tekken is movement. So I was thinking, what can this player do when brought into this, into Tekken? I was really excited, but it's a shame, the game didn't click with him.
Yeah, it's also interesting fact, short one to say. In Melee, Wavedash also exists.
Yeah, it does. It's a huge part of the game.
Yeah, it's also a huge part of the game where the execution is way different. You don't need to move with your analog stick. You also need to press buttons to do Wavedash. This is also interesting.
Sorry, can I just steal 1 minute here?
I think the execution
so much. It was just so interesting what Sephi said. Obviously, a good backdash doesn't make you a good Tekken player. It's just one out of 100 things you have to focus on in this game. So I guess, Sephi, would you mind then if they just removed the Korean backdash? You just press back over and over, back, and you get a Korean backdash. Everyone has access to it, and everyone can focus on learning the moves, frames, side steps, etc., etc. Do you think that would be a good idea to remove that?
This wouldn't be no. It wouldn't make a good idea because you can also distinguish in Tekken with this movement barrier. Not the movement barrier, but since everyone is moving different, even though a JDCR backdash is different than a Neuroma, since they're using the same technique, you can still see a difference in it.
Yeah, I agree. I like seeing that individuality.
It's
why people would want to make it simpler just because of what you said, that everything else is already so hard. So does backwards momentum have also to be, super hard? But I also fall more into that. It's kind of Tekken's identity to see everyone's different movement.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I think Tekken is way too difficult if you're a fucking pussy, though. And that's the main problem.
Oh, jeez.
No, seriously, because
turned on his microphone. Hurry up, come on.
I've been
supposed to be muted until at least 60 minutes.
And that's, I need to be specific here. I'm not directing that at Leffen or anything, because like we were talking before we started the podcast about how he's not like a good Smash player. He's like literally the GOAT. He's winning all these tournaments for years. He has this huge legacy. So that's not what I'm talking about. But for Tekken, it's kind of like you can be a very good fighting game player and you can be dope at these 2D games. And then you can be like good at several of them. You mean like Sonic Fox or whatever. But Tekken is so specific that you can, like, I'm not really a fighting game player. I'm a Tekken player. The only other fighting game that I fuck with is like Soul Calibur because it's very similar to Tekken. And I ultimately dropped that because it was so similar to Tekken that it was interfering with my Tekken. But you have to like look at it. Like I always saw it like learning a language. And when you do that, what you notice is you start building up like basic grammar and you learn how to introduce yourself. But like you said, Dinosaur, like you learn the rule and then you get to the next level and then you learn the exception to the rule. And it becomes like really difficult and the complexity increases exponentially as you go. So it's the kind of thing where you have to buckle down. And it's interesting because I'm so much newer at this than you are. Like Tekken 7 is the first Tekken game I ever played when it was new. But I can look back over all the years already that I've been playing Tekken, and I'm always better like after a 6-month period than I was at the start of that period. So if you're just willing to zoom out and wait for progress and look at it over like a really long time frame, then it becomes super fucking satisfying. if you're all of a sudden like breezing through ranks where you were really struggling a year ago, that is like so satisfying that you're gonna want to stick with Tekken. But you need to put in the time and the effort to get that far, and that takes a lot of time. A lot of people are like asking me if I'm like drunk or hiding from the government or something. The idea was that I'm actually cosplaying as a Tekken World Tour commentator. That's why I have the bracelets and everything. But I actually forgot like my most important props to really make it work. So I'm just gonna make sure I have the whole kit here.
How much did you spend on this?
It's all stuff I had laying around the house, except this stuff because this tastes like ass. But I'm sorry, now it's delicious. Leroy's not overpowered. Drink Red Bull, kids. It's gonna kill you, but your favorite video game company makes money, so it's a good idea.
Not just a Tekken commentator, but all the Tekken commentators simultaneously.
I'm literally every commentator on the Tekken World Tour. Namco, call me. I even have a Namco brand dildo about that big up my ass. You can't see it on camera, but something that we learned last year is that if you're not willing to take sugar from daddy, then Namco doesn't fuck with you. But I'm willing to play ball.
I love your frame wrist rep.
Okay, so when we were talking about kind of movement, I think it's worth like looking at the difference between like there's things that can be difficult to learn. And there's a sort of a difference between depth and stuff. And something which is deep is something where you can apply a few, to my mind anyway, is something where you can kind of apply a few rules which can be combined together in ways which can create like fairly infinite diversity, infinite like ways of playing. So if you think of things like Wavedash, right? It's a fairly simple thing. You do a wave dash, you do a crouch dash, and you can cancel it into another crouch dash, and your character will go like this, and you can do moves out of it. You press forward, and you can do forward moves. You can sidestep out of it, and whatever. But the way you can combine things gives you almost like infinite options from wave dash. It's very, very deep. A lot of what Tekken has loaded in, perhaps not with deliberately as a conscious choice, but for other reasons, has meant that there's lots more things which I would classify as stuff. Meaning this is not deep. This is just rote learning. This means you will have to learn to duck this character string here. You will have to learn to sidestep this character string here. You will have to learn, and a lot of these things are there are moves which are simply worthless or worthless or near worthless when you know about them, or not particularly good, or just okay, but you simply have to learn them. There is a long list of just book learning to do in this game. You want to learn about down forward 1 properties. You want to learn about down forward 2 properties. They're all going to be slightly different. You might learn like down forward 1s. They all work like this. Some of them evade things. Some of them some of them don't. Some of them have follow-ups. Some of them don't. You can sidestep, and then you're like, but you can sidestep them all to the left. And then Kazumi comes along, and you're like, oh.
But that's the way of the sequel, bigger and better, bigger and better, bigger and better, and you don't remove things. And then you sit there 20 years later, and a move list is actually, a never-ending PDF document. And that's just a sequel problem, I think, and it's incredibly bloated.
It becomes bloated when you start putting in characters with specific mechanics from other games in the game as well. The whole guest character 2D thing is kind of weird, where you have like bar characters. So like you want to teach somebody how to play Tekken, now you have to explain like focus dash cancels and meter burns, and that feels a little bit like bloat to me. Where it's you have characters that are in completely different like platforms.
Yeah, the thing is, just explaining King's chain throws to people. I've played them a little bit lately, and I'm like, you remember what they were in Tekken 2 and then Tekken 3, and now it's like, I don't know how many different chains, and never mind, the amount of options and mix-ups in them, and it's like, how many people know all of these breaks or moves?
I think with regards to like the I actually like I've said this to Arya 1 before. I actually like the 2D characters from a philosophical standpoint, and because I think they are actually like quite deep. They add new ways of playing with a relatively small amount of additions to the game. They're not really book learning characters. They're very much like organic like development thing. They come out from a few simple rules and like develop from there. And I think you can, by and large, learn those things with the exception that there's some stuff of like a few of the demon flip cancels are a bit like sometimes you can do this but it won't work, and sometimes you'll get demon flip wand and sometimes you need to sidestep or run under, and that is a bit book learning-y, but by and large I think they are like good additions. They are like deep, they're sort of quite ambitious, but a lot of the bloat from Tekken, in some ways it keeps people from seeing the depth, which is the timing, the mix-ups, this is because large movelists work to make things timed for you. I mean, because before, let's say Tekken Tag 1, let's take this as the the example of only spacing and movement. Tekken has very small practical move lists. Like the move lists are still reasonably large, but many of the moves are garbage. Most characters have very little, but the movement is incredible. It's very strong. It's very hard, and so all it is about having to time, chase the other person down and time your movement to hit them and time your attacks. A lot of the time in Tekken 7 and basically any game from Tekken 6 onwards, what a lot of people will do is they will just simply have a good quick move, another good quick move, another good slightly slower move, and another good slightly slower move, and a good slow move, and maybe they've got multiple ones, and you can sort of just dial through your movement list, and it will do the job of doing timing for you. You do not have to stutter the way you move, and the way you don't have to throw people off, because the very diversity of your move list throws people off. This is you can see this happen in real life. If you look at boxing versus MMA, boxers have a much better sense of timing than MMA fighters. They are much better at mixing up their timing, at throwing things off beat. They have a much better understanding of rhythm. And I think it's at least partially because they have very much less to think about. All they are doing is they're just timing punches, just jab, hook, cross, uppercut, so on. And so they can use a lot more of their brain to focus on timing mix-ups.
Right.
And MMA fighters, they can just sort of spam a huge move list. It really is how it works. They can just do kicks, knees, elbows, so on. So and it really works like that.
So boxing is Tekken Tag 1, MMA is Tekken 7.
Yeah, basically. It's not, but the underlying thing of the movement being the core and the soul of Tekken, I think that's where that's where a lot of the real depth lies. It's right. And you can often get games which have a lot of diversity in terms of the technical barrier, and I don't think it's necessarily often a bad thing to have something as organic as a technical barrier, whether as a technical kind of limiter where you can just get better and better and better and better at it. I know Mihawk he's played a lot of first-person shooters. I know a lot of there's a lot of diversity there in terms of the technical barriers that are involved. People will talk about things like Quake 3 as being this famously technical shooter, and there's a lot of them which are just deliberately made otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I play a lot of FPS games as well. Long before I started playing Tekken, I almost went professional in Counter-Strike 1.6 back then. So I have this huge FPS background where there's a lot of strategies in order to get good as well. And there's certain basics that you need to have in order to even be able to kind of compete, which is the same thing that goes for Tekken, I would say. There's this. I was listening to you guys and thinking about certain examples, because we were talking about whether or not we should kind of make backdash easier by just spamming back instead of properly canceling it. And I was thinking of think about a baby that like tries to slowly crawl and then at one point starts walking, just because you're like constantly training with the baby, and the moment it gets better, it helps the baby, or it helps the kid so much more, because the baby finally knows how to do it, and it's so much more satisfying to actually walk instead of just crawl all over the ground. And I was thinking like the amount of satisfaction that you will gain from being able to properly move in Tekken is much higher by knowing to properly execute it rather than just spamming back, because that's the type of beauty for me in Tekken, I would say. I think it's very nice to look at someone and see do all these type of things that require a certain amount of execution or skill ceiling, as we said before. So like you can tell by watching someone, okay, he has good movement, he has good reactions, he's ducking strings, he's breaking throws on reaction, all that type of stuff. Now, if we think about making this all easier, this will definitely help beginners in a sense, because it will make it much more accessible to them. But then we kind of have to ask ourselves is if this is the right way where we want to put Tekken, because Tekken in its legacy, as you said, Dinosaur, is a game where there's a lot of depth that goes into it. You were talking about timings and stuff, and I think it's still a big thing in Tekken. It's just not as present anymore, because with what you said, with the amount of moves that we have, it's just much easier to kind of like nail down the opponent by not really focusing on movement so much or timings, and just doing the moves on itself. And so I think there's different things that you definitely need to have and need to practice in order to kind of get a basic feeling for the game. And that applies to FPS games as well, because I mean, when I played a lot of FPS games back then, when I played a lot of Counter-Strike, I had to practice my aim. I had to practice, even movement existed there. So I was practicing bunny hops, and I was playing surf maps and all of that. All these type of things you needed to do in order to, be good at the game or be good at situational awareness. And then when you said when it's about deep things, so I was practicing, I don't know, like how to hold proper spots, how to throw grenades, and all of that. And you can transfer that to any game, basically. Any type of game has these type of things that kind of separate the good from the very good players. And it's up to you to personally have that type of dedication to get better at it. And I feel like if it would be, let's say, if it would be too simple, then I think Tekken would kind of lose its beauty in a sense. But I also feel like Namco should definitely consider to do some type of tutorials for the next game, because the way it currently is that the legacy players just have a huge advantage over the new players, just because they've been playing so much and they figured a lot of things out. And just thinking from a perspective, I mean, I started with Tag 2, so technically I'm kind of a newish player myself. I had to learn everything about Tekken in quite of a short time. And I remember watching the main man back then when I was learning the game. So it's kind of funny, I'm sitting here with him and talking about things.
And you've done really well. I mean, starting with Tag 2 and now strong competitive player. I mean, you gotta applaud that. That's not bad.
Yeah, and I just think that there's definitely types of ways, and I think there is types of ways to make this better from Namco's perspective. And I also do think that people don't want it to be all too easy, because I think that people truly appreciate a strong player when they see him. I think what people love the most is when they really see that a player is strong and they love watching him. And this is why people watch all of these top players on stream, or why they want to watch their top players, their favorite players on stream, because it's a beautiful thing to do. It's beautiful to watch them. And I think making it too simple wouldn't really help. So proper tutorials are needed for the future, I think. And I kind of agree with the things you said. I was just listening and then kind of making my mind up on things. And my personal response.
We were talking earlier about one of the ways in which the developers kind of close the gap between more experienced and beginner players is through the characters. I mean, you mentioned, Phil, earlier that you think this is one of the reasons that Leroy is the way he is. And it's not the first time they've done this.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. A lot of I think, what Namco obviously want, like the thing to focus on, like what people want is for the game to be fun, right? But that can change in a lot of ways for a lot of different people. But there are a lot of basically, if you want to play Tekken, there are many different things to learn, but there are also many different characters which will allow specific elements of the game to be easier for you to learn. Like they will have training wheels on them to some extent, right? If you are struggling with your ability to close distance, for example, there are characters which can literally close distance by pressing a button. They are like Eliza and Eliza and Elisa, right? They literally have you want to close distance, press a button, they're in. If you don't have particularly strong defense, you can play characters which just have incredibly strong. You're not particularly good at blocking and guessing things. You can play characters. Yeah, you can play Asuka and Xiaoyu and Feng. And so a lot of characters are there. You can find specific ways to improve things, like to not improve, but to kind of support things that you're not particularly good at already. And Leroy is just meant, I think, to be just an all-rounder. Like they just want him to be seen on stream, and they just want him to be like Namco saw how popular he was, and they want him to be seen at this point. But in general, the balancing process has been one since I think Tekken 6, where they want people to feel powerful when they are playing, and they don't want them to have too much, and they don't want them to be gated by impossible matchups. So just to go back in history for a bit, if we think about Tekken 6 and when Tekken 6 got released and its reaction in as it was being brought out into the world, is that the main thing to remember about Tekken 6 is that it was the first Tekken which was very very popular in the arcades in Japan. It was the first one. It became, it was the number one seller in Japan in the arcades, for a very, very long time. It was the most popular game there. And Tekken had never historically been that popular. And in terms of the significant balancing changes in Tekken 6, what it did was it cleaned out specific punishment weaknesses from a lot of characters. It made wall combos much, much easier, made move lists pretty big, and
jabs are all 10 frames. They removed the 8-frame jabs.
Are all,
as well.
Yeah, started universalizing the system, and what else? Oh yeah, and toned movement down. And this ended up being super popular, and I think that the way that it ended up being popular is that you specifically want it to be popular as an arcade game. This was how Tekken was balanced. You want to bring people back to put more money in, and I think to do that they brought them back to characters with huge move lists, with minimized matchup problems, and so the way Tekken works now is sort of closer to an RPG than perhaps it did back in the day, because you can constantly explore your character's huge diverse move list on your own, and you constantly have powerful tools. So, the other thing, Tekken 6 started adding launchers which go through everything. I don't want to say necessarily crushing, launchers which go through everything. So you have powerful. You don't necessarily know what all the other things are going on. Let's say I'm just an average player playing in the arcade. I don't necessarily know everything that's coming at me, but I know I have hard counters that I can just throw out that will clean out lots of things. I know I have Lars up forward 3.
Zafina.
That will clean up
Zafina. Yeah, and they added these things in more and more over time. But I can just sit there with my character, and I can grind my ranks and my card, which I would have, and I can get better with my own character. I don't necessarily, but the thing is, once I go out into the wider world, every character has been designed like mine. Every character has its own giant move list. Every character has like to explore for this own as like its own personal art to explore this character as like its own personal RPG. Every character is like this. You have to learn everyone else's hard counters and what there are to them. So
Right.
in some ways, like making the game more of a journey with your own character has made the journey of understanding every character very, very, very hard for a lot of people. And the systemic rules used to like determine whether to determine how to act against them are often like quite blurry. So this is why I think the game is very, very challenging.
I thought, like, in terms of how the game rewards legacy skill, as Leffen said, that it rewards legacy skill too much. Before we actually went live with the podcast, Dinosaur said something very interesting, that we talked a little bit about Leroy, and then he said, well, what about if a particular or a certain legacy character was released now, for the first time? Like Hwoarang, for example. We're so used to Hwoarang. Ever since Tekken 3, we've learned to deal with him. The move list has been built upon over time, over the years, and we get used to everything from one game to the next. But what if Hwoarang was released, a week ago, and he's completely new, and he has his Tekken 7 move list? Would that even work? It would be so absurd. Yeah, so absurd. It would be seen as like triple S plus for like a year, I guess, before people would get used to it.
Yeah, he was and Hwoarang is someone who has been incredibly conservatively balanced in many ways, because he's been trash in pretty much every Tekken game, apart from Tekken 7, where he's fine. But they were incredibly cautious about making him good. He's rubbish in Tekken 3, he's rubbish in Tekken Tag, he's rubbish in Tekken 4, he's rubbish in Tekken 5. He gets better in every single game. In every single game they've buffed him. And he's still been crap until like Tekken Tag, where he was okay, and Tekken 7 where he's okay. And and this thing is that they like did this so cautiously. If you just slammed this character right in people's faces, they would have been horrified.
I think exactly. They go, you have a million moves to mix up from, so you don't get good moves. You don't get good frames. It's like Lei in a sense, where it's such a nightmare to just deal with the move list that you can't really have them have, that super strong down forward one or low poke and all of that. Very interesting in terms of balancing, but as you said, like, if one of those characters were just dropped upon us right now, or like King, it would be worse than Leroy.
Yeah, and this is why, like, historically, like the new characters they've added, with the possible exception of the 2Ds, they've been super simple, and they've been very conservatively designed. Like Shaheen, Kazumi, Katarina, or basically all the new characters apart from the 2Ds, they're just like, a lot of the time they're just simplified archetypes of other characters. They're just like, Shaheen is just boring Lee. Kazumi is just
You're hurting feelings, Dinosaur. Stop it.
Kazumi and Jinpachi are just terrible training wheels Mishimas. Like, that just happen to be better than actual Mishimas. Like, this is the other problem, is that obviously, like, they are training wheels versions of characters which are better than the characters they're like meant to be training wheels versions of. But like, but they're very conservative in the introduction. And then they say, okay, we know how these characters work with these, so we give them, you make a character, and in Tekken 8 they'll probably introduce, he'll be Frank Tekken, and he will be from like Argentina, and he will have a poke low, a full crouch sweep, a hop kick which evades things, a down forward 2, a down forward 1, a 12 frame punisher, and a stance which has a plus and block high, a launch punishable low, a mid, and another move which no one ever uses, and the stance will mostly get used in combos. Like that will be the next Tekken 8 character. So they know how to balance this stuff, but like. So so they have traditionally been like pretty conservative with the way they've like introduced new characters, like just in terms of their framework and how they're designed.
Right, but so with Leroy, you watch the trailer, you see the gameplay trailer. What were you expecting out of that character? What were you guessing?
Like you were thinking, he's gonna be cool, and then you're like, oh, he's actually like a super basic character. Like he's been designed to be like not particularly interesting.
No, exactly. Can do everything and everything really well. Doesn't really stand out in anything. Like, yeah. But what's like? Were you expecting something else? Because I was expecting more of a defensive character with very bad range and a multiple parries, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
And some execution.
I think I was expecting, we were all expecting someone approximately similar to Wang. And he is a bit similar to Wang. He's just way, way better. Like, he's just a little bit, tiny bit, Wang, not a good character particularly. Leroy, he's all right.
He's all right.
All right.
He's okay. Pretty average.
I was expecting them to bring out a broken character because that makes them a lot of money. Turns out that's what they did.
Oh, come on. Yeah, say that about Negan, Marduk, Armor King, Julia.
Yeah, fair
Julia's
enough,
execution.
I like the argument where, like, if you bring in a really complex old legacy character now, there's so much stuff that it becomes a nightmare to deal with. I think the point to make there is that if you look at these legacy characters, they don't have orbitals that are -3, though.
No, that's true.
Yeah. So, like, you've taken that, a pretty bare bones design, but you've intentionally, like we spoke about earlier, taken the numbers and then just shaved off impact frames, shaved off disadvantage frames until you have.
But they've just given him everything. Like, he has every type of good move archetype I can think of.
Every good move archetype, but then they also broke the frame data, and they did that for, like you said, they want him to be used, they want him to be seen on stream, but that's obviously because he's a marketing gimmick. And I think that like I'm not criticizing anybody of criminal wrongdoing, for the record. I'm just criticizing them and calling it wrongdoing, and I'm calling them cunts.
Yeah. No, they fucked up. So does everyone think he was overpowered on purpose?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, mostly.
I mean, TWT was over. They wanted to make a cool character that fits the hype of the trailer. And so they did. They gave it. I mean, after watching the trailers, after watching the very first teaser that we got from Leroy, we all thought he's going to be the new badass, one of the coolest characters we've ever seen. Probably ever since Tekken 6 dropped, he is the newest or the coolest new looking character we've ever gotten ever since Tekken 6. But he's just so dry to play, and in his moveset, he's just so dumb that after playing him for an hour, it just feels tiring, or it doesn't feel fun.
It's not rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, they just kind of wanted to make people actually feel super strong playing with him, so that Leroy could live up to the expectations showing in the trailer. I think that's all it is.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, like, are you, because you spoke about the beauty of Tekken earlier, which I think is a great point. Do you want Tekken to be a beautiful and good game, or do you want to sell noodles and DLC to, like, fed children who don't know better? And that's the choice you have to make.
Yeah.
In general,
oh, sorry.
I was going to say, like, in general, like, Tekken 7 is the most popular Tekken they've released for ages. Like, people really like it, so they're clearly doing things which are like good, which people are responding to. Like, it's clearly the most balanced Tekken ever. this, especially like the most recent iteration of it, with the possible, with the possible exception of Leroy, but I don't think we can yet see whether he's the best character in the game yet. I think he's clearly up there, but I don't necessarily know that he's actually unbeatable at a top level. I think every one of his moves has some risk to it. It's just I still don't know how the entirety of it all locks together, at least from my perspective. But yeah, as going back to the thing of is Tekken too hard to get into? Yeah, and sometimes I think the problem is the moment the difficulty is not necessarily in ways which are entertaining for people. I think that was because that was Leffen's primary thing, is that he was okay with the movement and okay with the challenging stuff, but what he wasn't good with was the sheer amount of stuff he needed to learn. And I think that the way I think there are ways around this. I don't think you need to be I think there are still a lot of moves which just don't serve much purpose. I think in the PDF, Arya called out my one of my personal least favorite moves that exist in Tekken. Heihachi's down forward 1-1.
Yeah.
Heihachi isn't a terrible.
Yeah.
Heihachi's Heihachi's not a dominating top tier character, and he's super hard to play. Maybe the hardest character to play in the game, or at least certainly up there. Doesn't win tournaments. Doesn't mean that his down forward 1-1 makes any sense. What's his down forward 1-1 there for? It's what does it do? All it does is just like a down forward 1, but it adds a bit more damage at the cost of a little more risk. That doesn't really have a strategic purpose. It's just there. It just exists, and you can use it in some wall combo or whatever. But what do any down forward 1-1s exist for? A down forward 1 doesn't serve as that purpose anyway.
But doesn't that track the second hit?
Yeah, and that's a terrible thing to have happen, because again, it's one of these things where you're
you annoy people.
Yeah, it's one of these things where you're it's just something you have to learn. You're going to be oh yeah, this move looks incredibly linear. All of these other moves which are like this are linear. And Heihachi's one, the second hit, is just a homing move. You now have to learn that. Just learn that property and just remember that one for next time. It's a homing move. And there's tons of moves which are sort of like this. I just don't really know what they're there for. They're just there to make the game a bit more just have stuff to throw out in it. It makes it that kind of let's do moves until they work kind of play. They don't necessarily have clear strategic applications. So I think you can make the game, you can keep the game fun, and you can keep the game balanced, and you can keep the game, with that sense of exploration of your own character. But you also you have to give people fun, good reasons to use moves. You waves, things which make sense. But so I think in terms of making the game itself easier, or the game itself more approachable, I think obviously the tutorials and everything are a given. Everyone, 100% of people can agree on this. The game itself, I think trimming the bloat makes a lot more sense than attacking the movement system. At least in part because they've been attacking the movement system and the general mechanics of the game for years. They've toned down the ground game, they've toned down the throw game, they've toned down movement. All of the mechanics in the game have been consistently getting sort of cut away a bit.
Yeah.
But the amount of moves has just kept going up and up and up and up and up.
But they will never remove that, because I think they see that as content. You pay for this. Look at all this vast array of moves. Look how complicated it is. I think they see that as a selling point.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's tons of moves like this. Where I think they should think about, do moves add to the identities of characters? I've talked about this with Arya a lot of times. Arya 1.
Why does he get to be 1?
I knew him first. So so many characters, their best moves are down forward ones and down forward two or down forward twos, and you've got to ask yourself, like, you don't necessarily need to balance characters around having good down forward ones and down forward twos. It's possible. Marduk doesn't have a good down forward one. I mean, the equivalent of a down forward one. He doesn't have anything like a down forward one. He's still a really good character. Steve does not have anything like a down forward two or a launcher like that. He's still a really good character. Like, you can look at characters like you can look at characters like Law and Paul and Hwarang and all these other kind of people, and you'd be like, why does so much of your gameplay revolve around generic right uppercuts? Like, does Paul really need a down forward two? You could make a good version of Paul that didn't have a down forward two. Does Paul need that
what
many?
What other move would I do like this? Standing 3 meters away from my opponent.
Like Hwarang is a perfect example here. Like, you have such a cool, expressive character with this huge move list, and down forward two is one of his best moves. I mean,
So, so I think, like, a lot of it makes things easier to understand if you can figure out that it makes things easier to understand and characters easier to learn if things fit in with their identity. Paul can be a good character if he didn't have a down forward two. Does Paul need like 5 hop kick variations or however many he has? Like, you're like, here's hop kick, and here's also 1 shredder kick, and here's 2 shredder kicks, and there's his forward shredder kicks, and they're all different. And you're like, what does that do for the character? And like, does Law need Paul's down forward two will randomly go onto jabs. Law's down forward two is a homing move for some reason. Is like, are these things which allow, like, these things you just have to learn them by getting them bashed into your head, but they're not like you don't immediately like look at Bruce Lee and say that would be someone who would, I want to see Bruce Lee just doing a generic right uppercut all the time, because like you don't see him doing that in Enter the Dragon. Like, the guy tries to sidestep around him, and then Bruce Lee just like uppercuts him over here, and O'Hara goes up in the air. Like, that's my general take.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, a lot of you see these generic tools everywhere among the characters, and as much as you want to think, how do I lay this out? You want to see Tekken as a game with 46 unique characters, but when you really look into it, so many characters fit into archetypes, and it's the same with moves. Like, down for twos are just universally super powerful. But that's so nice to have characters like you described, like Marduk doesn't have a downward one, really. Bryan, where you press, downward one and you get Gatling punches, who are very different to your generic downward one. And his downward two is on elbow, which is like -6, -7. It's so cool when the characters actually, bend those things we take for granted. And I guess maybe it's what you said, Dinosaur, but it would be nice to see more of that. And maybe Paul doesn't need a downward two. Maybe he can do something else. More of that, I think, would be great. I feel Noctis is a really cool DLC character because of his range. In my opinion, he's a little bit like a siege tank in StarCraft, where he has, at least in Season 2, like, his effective range was pretty sick with the damage 1+2. You could abuse that to just a crazy amount. But more of that would be great.
I'm pretty sure I've read an interview, though, where Harada stated that a lot of characters have powerful, generic, shared moves to make the game easier to get into and to make it easier for players to hop between characters. Because now you have 49 of them, and you want a greater diversity of character usage. Is that the best way of going about it, though?
But I think it's because there's all you then get a big diversity in how good those generic tools are. Like, the down forward ones in this game, for example. There's like, let's say Leo doesn't have very good tracking, doesn't have very good rate. It's like Leo is probably has one of the worst down forward ones, and that's just why you don't see Leo very much. It's just the way it is. Shaheen, huge range. Okay tracking, good, decent tracking to the left, no high evasion properties. Lee, okay range, high evasion properties, completely tracks to his left. Miguel tracks completely to his left, has a follow-up, not as good on block as other ones. Has 2 follow-ups. Kazumi tracks completely to her right. Very, very small evasion properties. So the thing is, and the down forward 2s, Law's freaky tracking, no reason. Pauls goes under things for whatever, so they're quote unquote universalized, but you have to learn a ton of weird properties for all of them. Like they're all different in subtle but like game affecting ways.
Right, but now we're talking about like very, very top tier level of players, and I think it's something that maybe, Leffen is a top tier player, not necessarily a Tekken player, but it would be nice to have things that average Joe picks up the game can see immediately that, when I press down for 1 with this character, it's completely different, and it's immediately apparent that the characters set themselves apart. Whereas what you're describing is very real to everyone sitting here in this conversation, but to 99% of Tekken players, they're probably hearing this for the very first time, I'm guessing. So
if you want...
I guess...
Sorry. So I just want to ask, so if you want to make Tekken easier, is it better to remove generic tools or to normalize them?
Should have a smaller roster so that you can have more unique designs that stand out from one another but still are balanced in relation to one another. When you try and have 50 characters and they're going to exist in the same environment, then you're going to end up with generic tools. Otherwise, you're going to have these weird outliers where like Akuma, where they just play their own game, and do completely different things. But if you don't balance that properly, then it breaks the game. So I think a smaller roster is the answer to that. If there were a much smaller roster and you had to worry about maybe 5, 6, 7 different downward ones, that's not that difficult to do.
Yeah, I'd love to see
if all characters were represented, by the way, in the online environment, if all characters were balanced enough that they were all being used, then you would encounter all those different variations of the downward one on a daily basis. But there are a couple of downward ones right now, like Leo's, that you're never going to learn how to play against because nobody wants to use the character. They just want to play Leroy because his downward one is -1.
I kind of liked that with Tekken 4. It had 19 characters, and they were all very different from each other. And maybe 19 is a number we laugh at today, but when each character is so complicated, 19 kind of makes sense. I think the perfect number is around
30.
25.
Yeah, 25 to 30.
7 vanilla, I think.
Yeah. This is what Tekken 7 was initially, I guess, conceived as a way to reduce the bloat from Tag 2. Because and now we're sitting on Season 3, 49 characters, 48 unique characters, which is more than Tekken Tag 2 now, and we're back at the same problem.
Yeah, and we get the power creep issue that we talked about in the last episode where, I'm sorry that I keep on coming back to this, but I'm becoming pretty jaded, but it's profitable and it keeps the hype going when the characters are good. And it creates the balance issues that we are seeing where parts of the roster are just completely neglected by the online community, the tournament community. I think it's really sad.
Yeah. Dinosaur, can you please explain the balancing team's decisions with Gigas, please?
I think he is... honestly, I think the problem with Gigas is that he's actually, he's pretty cheap. He's not good. He is cheap. These are different. These things are different. Gigas is actually he's a character. He's like True Ogre in Tekken Tag 2. He is.
Okay,
he's not good.
One.
What's that?
I thought you were going to say Tekken Tag 1. I was like,
no.
Yeah,
no. He's a little bit worse than Tekken Tag 1 True Ogre, just a tiny bit. No, he's like Tekken Tag 2 Droga, and the character is not good, but he's super easy to play. Gigas is not hard to play at all, and he has a very annoying and actually reasonably bottom to top level practical playstyle. like that you can just rely on. He's similar, like Jack, right? You only need to do 2 or 3 things to actually play functional Gigas. And the problem is you can either tone these things down, and in which case you might find and buff the rest of his move list, or you can just sort of leave him as he is, because he has had surprisingly, he's had more tournament success probably than obviously way better characters than say Heihachi and Leo a lot of the time. Say for example, the time when the Gigas team beat the Korean team in Master Cup. Because all you really need to do with Gigas is you need to do down 4 while standing 1, 1-2 punish things, down 2 punish things, and then if you want to get crazy, you do down back 2 and forward 2, and then maybe the rage drive against certain characters and so on. He's a very, very, very simple and actually like I said, pretty cheap character. And the problem is with simple and cheap is that it's very difficult to stop that from doing well. It's if you make that too good, it is very horrible to watch and very horrible to play against. If Gigas was actually a good character, with his current tool set, he would, and he had the kind of exposure that say Tekken 7 Jack, Season 1 Jack did, people would hate him. He is way more boring than Season 1 Jack. He is even so I think that they're pretty concerned about is that just he would he would be very boring if he was good.
When you say it's cheap, what exactly are you talking about? Is it the range, the simplicity, or the charge?
Yeah.
Or
yeah, it's basically just it's pretty simple. You just do a 1 jab, or a down 4 or a down and 4, or a while standing 1. And while standing 1 will go through things, jab will beat everything else, and down 4 will chip them away. And when they eat down 4, you do while standing 1, it will beat jabs, or you backdash and whiff punish them if they do something else. And then sometimes you do forward 2 just to stop them from maybe doing something. And this is a very core move list you can use to make this character effective against a lot of people. And he will lose against most of the cast in long sets and so on, because they'll just beat him down due to his fundamental flaws. But his this approach, it's really cheap. It's just not good. It's not good over the long term, but it's very simple and easy to do. Very, very simple and easy to do.
So in the short term, you see good success, and then it falls apart basically.
Yeah, and it's just there's no effort to it. You can put all your mind into breaking throws and reacting to the opponent's offense, because you only have a very small amount of things to worry about. It's like Jack or Noctis or any of these other characters. It's very difficult
Kazumi.
to even more so than almost any of the others. He's really genuinely, I think, one of the easiest characters to play in the game. And so I think that they're just I think they're just worried about that he would actually not be particularly entertaining. I think obviously the way to do it is to improve the rest of his move list, and maybe remove weird high evasion properties on his while standing 1 and a couple of other things, balance him out a bit. But I don't think they care, because he's not popular enough. So they just leave him where he is, and they're well, no one's ever going to see that this character's pretty annoying, so you can just.
But isn't there a paradox there as well? As you say, he's potentially the easiest, but then at the absolute highest level, he has to be one of the absolute hardest. If you're facing someone who knows these core sets of moves and how to use them, and knows the matchup on a fundamental level, what the fuck do you do with Gigas?
Yeah, I mean that's what good and bad is, right? It's just It's just how easy is this character at given levels of play, and over longer timescales. DR Devil Jin was the best character in that game.
Yeah. I would say characters like Kazuya are maybe the opposite, where someone just picks them up and you can do Rising Sun for a while and a couple of strings, but after a while it doesn't really work anymore. Or people who play Bryan, they go to green ranks, and as soon as people block Snake Edge, they drop the character because they don't understand how to take it further. Whereas with Gigas, maybe you can see a lot of success for quite a while, and then suddenly you plateau, as in people start to know the matchup. But of course, characters like Bryan or Kazuya can do really well on high level.
Yeah.
So is that like the opposite then?
To an extent, like I mean, Tekken is a game I think now where it is balanced enough that a lot of what defines how well characters do is not necessarily how good they are, but how easy they are. Like, as in, how many things you have to keep in your mind, how much effort can you devote to the game system instead of your own character? Like, and for a long time, like tournaments have been dominated primarily by characters that are pretty easy. And this is, I think, why Akuma, like, it took him so long to turn up. Like, people have just not wanted to play, particularly like people don't want to have to give tons of their mental energy to maintaining a complex, difficult character in tournament. So like Mishima's, the classic example. They're very, very clearly good in this game, but do not have much tournament presence. Bryan, clearly very good, but being able to, like I said, give all of your energy to the system, very, very is very, very powerful, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Arya Mihawk, do you have anything to say to that? I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, the game is so balanced now that the most important factor is difficulty at this point.
Yeah, Steffi, you can go first.
Yeah, I think since there are so many moves, it's really difficult to learn this game, though, as you have said as well. But to think about the solution for that is really difficult. Like, this makes also Tekken so special to have a lot of moves, and people who are trying to start with the game are looking at the list and they don't see how important or not important these moves are. Like, they just see, oh man, King or Lei has got over 150 moves, and this makes them so scared about that to try this character. But at the end, you just see 20 or 30 moves on a high level. You don't see many moves on a certain level. But for I would say, beginner level, you will see a lot of moves on beginners because they are like, okay, I want to test out this move, I want to try out this move. And this makes beginners quite scared to lab all these things. But if you reach the level that okay, Snake Edge is reactable, or this move is not useful at all because it's so punishable on block, then you don't need to worry about that move at all, since you win against these moves, I would say, on a certain level. So if beginners reach that kind of level, it takes time. They can't do it in a week like Leffen tried that. They need way more time to be successful against a lot of characters, like 49 characters, right? But at the end, these things won't be important anymore if you are on a high level, because you don't see a Snake Edge or useless moves at all. But to reduce the gap, or let's say to do it easier for the beginner level, it's to find a solution would be tutorials. That's true, but maybe also I was thinking about that, to mention some special properties from that move. For example, if you want to say a down for 2 by Paul, it has other properties like another down for 2 like laws. For example, the special thing about Paul's property is like it's more high crush. It's more evasive than laws down for 2. And maybe to mention that in the command list would be a good thing to show people who are trying to use these moves and don't know these properties, to show, be careful about that, and this is one of the side effects of that move. Maybe this would help to have a notation for certain moves to show them, okay, this is a high crush move. This has other properties, like this tracks well to this side, to make it more visible or more accessible for beginners. Like, we know that because we have the experience, but not everyone knows that.
Mm.
But yeah, this came to my mind.
You would have to normalize if you're going to make notations. For example, high crush in the move list, you'd have to normalize high crush so that all moves that have the property would crush highs in the same way. Do you stick the high crush property icon on like an orbital that goes over highs because the hitbox is bullshit? You know, it's really difficult. That the complexity of the 3D models is kind of what makes the game so difficult. Because you get these subtle differences that are really, so you would almost have to like normalize the properties of the moves if you wanted to make useful instructional material that refer to it. I mean, if you want to reduce the skill gap, I think the game is doing so well right now. Like we've been talking about how extremely popular it is. I think honestly, there's no real need for it. You either play it long enough that you catch the Tekken bug and then you keep going, or you don't. And if you don't, maybe it's not for you. But if you're going to attack something, then I would prefer you attack the movement system and simplify it over releasing, a character that's too cheap and allows people to catch up because the properties or the frame data are too good. I mean, and Namco are never going to attack the movement system over releasing a character like Leroy because they can't monetize a simplified Korean backdash. But that would be really funny if the next DLC was you can pay to get a Korean backdash that is just a button input and you can bind it to something. That would be the funniest thing, dude. That would be that's season 4. Yeah, you just buy the free Korean backdash that you bind to shoulder button. That'd be fucking sick.
Yeah, $65.
Yeah.
Just to rewind a bit, we were talking a bit about crush properties, and actually, Dino and I we made a video like 2 years ago about. I mean, high crush and low crush are really defined things in the game, and they're probably better worded as tech crouch and tech jump. I think that'll probably make it easier to understand. But a move that is a high crush property is technically crouching, so it will always evade highs. Right? And a move that is a low crush is technically jumping, so it will always avoid lows. And then you have moves, and which, for example, like orbital. The reason that high crush is, it's nothing to do with it being tech crouch or anything, but it's because of framebox of hitbox interaction. And when you're talking about that, there's a wide spectrum of variance or variation. So I mean, it's kind of a subtle difference, but hitbox interaction and low crush, high crush are two distinct things, but there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah. I generally use the technical term avoid stuff.
Yeah.
Like when I'm talking about or goes under stuff, like when I'm talking about pulls down forward 2, because I think this is pretty technically descriptive. I wouldn't necessarily say pulls down forward 2 is high crush because you can electric or back one him out of it every time. But I just say it goes under stuff. Similarly, you get a few moves which will go over stuff, but if you can actually knock them out of them in the air with big enough hitbox lows, like certain points of capital punishment and stuff like that, you can just or Ravens up forward 3, you can just literally boot them out of midair with lows. So for whatever reason, they're in the air, but they are not technically jumping.
Yeah, that happens a lot. It's really annoying with some characters where you really think you're obviously in the air, but somebody can normal launch you for full combo damage, and you don't get the airborne scaling.
Yep.
That happens with going in with forward 3-4, for example, the homing move with Elisa. When she's going in with that, you can just launch her normal, even though she's literally flying in the air.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I think I saw someone doing it. I think I saw someone doing it to King's up and 2, the big elbow drop. They somehow launched it with cans on the way down.
Yeah,
with Jin, something like that. It was incredible. Yeah.
Poor King.
Yeah.
But you'd probably be so caught off guard when you hit that launch that you drop a combo.
Yeah, exactly. At least it's a relatively slow launcher, so you'd have a bit of time to think about it. But yeah, you'd be like, okay, what did I? But yeah, like I think in general, like the things to do would be to to make the game more approachable, like focusing on character archetypes, make sure moves make sense within like who the character is as a personality, because a lot of what's great about Tekken is that it allows for a lot of personal expression. You can and a lot of people have found characters which really they find are really like expressive for them, for who they are and how they want to play, and you don't necessarily want to take that away from people, and you don't want to make it so that they can't play that character because the character just isn't good enough. But I think like they should, when they're balancing, they should think about do these characters, does this move like allow for personal expression and like strategic? Does it have a strategic purpose, or is it just kind of there? Is it just kind of a move which exists for a purpose? Does this character have? Why does Lars have at least four, like launchers all around the same speed? Like he's got forward back 2-1, forward both punches, down forward 2-1, and up forward 3, which were all around 16, 15 frame normal hit launches.
Yeah. With
slightly different properties, and you're like, why does he have 4 of these? Like,
it's just to confuse, I guess.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, exactly. You're just like, oh yeah, so there's up forward 3, and when up forward 3 first came out, it was a nightmare to punish because he sidestepped on the way down. He's got up forward, you got a duck down forward 2-1, you got a launch punish forward back 2-1, you got a minus 13 frame up. They're all pretty much the same move in utility. Like down forward 2's got some tiny bit of evasion, blah blah.
But like, yeah, so different reactions your opponent has to do. That one, duck. Oh, it's that one,
exactly. Yeah, so you can think about like, how do you need to balance this, because that's just stuff. That's not depth. It's just stuff.
Yeah.
And you can make Lars better and you can make him more interesting without giving him things that he already has. And with I think they've done a very good job of balancing season 3 Lars out and adding more interesting things without removing his, they haven't affected his personality much. So that's how I think you balance. You take out things which don't really exist or have a very niche purpose, and you focus on the personality of the character. And I think maybe you want to focus on this from a roster standpoint as well. If there are too many characters, we should just delete Shaheen.
But they did this. They obviously removed Armor King, gave some of Armor King's moves to King, 4-1, down 3. We only need one grappler, guys. Let's minimize. Let's not bloat anymore. Then game sells well. Put in Armor King, and suddenly he's back. And so I think they had the idea, but then the game did too well. So it's a double-edged sword. Now we got to add more content, and suddenly it's a nightmare. But I guess the intentional plan was to actually remove the bloating, like Armor King, Tekken 8, remove Shaheen. No one plays him.
I think Shaheen was there because initially Lee wasn't in the game. Like they were just like, why don't we just have like an easy Lee? And people complain about him, and then they were like, actually, people do kind of miss Lee, the real Lee. Let's bring back the hard one and make him terrible.
Yeah, and just the fact that they actually removed Lei. Only season 1 DLC was guaranteed. Season 2 was a bonus because the game did well. They actually removed Lei. Classic, iconic legacy character, Jackie Chan knockoff, and they removed him.
Julia.
But then they backpedal.
Speaking of Lee being terrible, actually, I know someone who disagrees with that.
He was terrible. I mean, when they brought him back in 7.0, we're talking.
Okay.
Like when they, like Lei and Miguel were like, they weren't too good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, on that point, should we go on to the tier list topic, or is there anything else we want to?
There is one thing that I would like to mention or talk about before we go to the tier list.
Sure.
I was talking to my chat the other day about it, and since we're talking about buffs and nerfs, or how characters should be changed in order to express yourself as a player better when you identify yourself with a character. Is it a good choice to nerf a character based on say like the community saying that things are too good or too bad, or is it better to buff or nerf things based on how good the actual tool set actually is? So like, for example, you were talking about down forward 1-1 Heihachi having no purpose. Or like, I don't know, like perhaps Paul's down forward 2 having some frames where it goes under high or where it goes under highs. Is that a point where like the dev team should, or the balancing team should take a look at? Just look at the character and see like, okay, he has too many good tools. What could we tone down in order to not ruin the character, but make him so that you could express yourself more with the character? Is that like a good approach, or is it better to kind of listen to the, I don't know, Namco probably has certain statistics where they look into their data and just see like, okay, an online Heihachi probably uses a lot of forward 2 or full crouch down forward 4. So should we just tone down the damage because at the lower level, a lot of people get hit by that? That was something that I was thinking about with my chat the other day, and I would like to talk about it with you guys for a little bit, because I think that's a really interesting topic. Should it be so that certain moves get buffed or nerfed based on how many casuals, maybe competitors, get hit by it, or should it be buffed or nerfed just because the moves are too good or too bad? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I've said since we started talking about balancing in tiers on this podcast that I think you should balance with respect to online and onto tournaments, because if you're a professional player and you play Tekken for a living and you're that good at it, then you'll figure it out. You'll find something you can do. But the vast majority of the consumers, the people who actually play Tekken, the vast majority of matches, the people who suffer when the balance is really bad, it's the online community. I think to answer your question, one thing you could look at is just usage statistics, because if a character is theoretically very good but is never used, then it's not really a problem. But when Leroy is simultaneously too good and the most popular character online, then online becomes unplayable. I think democracy and focusing on online is the way to do it. And then the competitive scene of the top guys, I mean, we don't need to help them. You know what I mean? They'll always find something that they like, they can make work. Some of them are playing Leroy right now.
With my question, I didn't objectively mean to kind of like separate the online from the tournament community. What I meant is should a character be buffed or nerfed based on his too good tool sets, or because a lot of people get, I don't know, like hit out of things? It's kind of my point doesn't really get through, but I don't know how to.
Yeah, because you're saying like because you should look at like, should the character get changed because of like because of community feedback, or because how they are like as a like because of how they are as an existing character? Should the balance team be independent in their assessments, or should they like listen to the complaints which are coming at them from like? And I think in these cases, you should probably, I think the balance team should listen to people should take into account like how people are talking to them, but they should not take their word as gospel, because people are very, very biased, and people are shitty at picking things at seeing how things are balanced or should be balanced, and this goes for low level players, mid level players, and top level players. They are bad, everyone, and they basically think, what are things I personally struggle with? I don't like them. What a personal like Nin, for example, was he was one of the best, considered historically one of the top maybe 3 or 4 Korean Tekken players who ever lived, right? And huge amounts of success. A lot of people put him number 2 after Ni. And if you asked him who were the best characters in Tekken 6, he would say one of the characters he would say was like King, and that's dumb. That's dumb. Like, that was a stupid opinion. And top players have tons of stupid opinions. And the community also has tons of stupid opinions, and has and listening to the community too much has done tremendous damage to Tekken in the past. With this, the classic example being Tekken 4. Because when people played Tekken Tag, it was very popular as a tournament game, or at least okay as popular as a tournament game. Like Tekken is, it was way less popular than it is now. But it was very spacing focused, very dominated by Mishimas and Ogres, and Changs to a lesser extent. And people complained incessantly because it was the first competitive Tekken, and people just complained about the things which were strong. They were like, and they said, the movement is too good in this game. You can backdash to the other side of the screen. It is ridiculous. Mishimas are too good in this game. They are mixing up. You knock down from 1-1-2. God Fist is too much. The game is unrealistic. It looks stupid. Juggles go on for ages. Like, this game looks dumb. And so Namco, being responsive to the needs of the community, they said, okay, here is Tekken 4. And it was exactly everything. I personally complained about Tekken Tag in these ways, because I was like, yeah, this stuff is unfair. And I want to see a more closer up, exciting game. How could it be bad, right? I said, I was on board with all this. And then Namco was just like, okay, here is Tekken 4. Backdash has been completely annihilated. The combo system you can tech roll a foot off the floor, and combo scaling and pushback are both huge. Mishimas have been completely changed and are not very good. Everything about and you played the game, you're like, I see. This is shit. And
it's just so nice about Kazuya that only counter hit launches with twin pistons, electric. Everything requires counter hit, and you're like, but isn't this supposed to be a punishment?
I have to say, honestly, I fucking love Tekken 4 Kazuya. He's one of the funnest characters they've ever put in Tekken. He just can't win, but he's so fun. He's so fun. You could just wave dash people into the wall and then do wall push 1-1-2. He's so entertaining. I love him, but he's not very good. But this was an exact example of Namco just listening to community feedback and then making the game they asked for, and the community was like, "What the fuck have you given us?" And so it is. So they should listen to if things are obviously broken, if things are obviously out of hand, they should listen to people. But and they should take into account what people are saying, but they should also clearly remember the lessons of the past, and remember that they are the game designers and we do not know what the fuck we are talking about a lot of the time when it comes to that kind of thing. It's actually very, very hard to make a relatively balanced game. It's very, very hard. Not many people can do it. The Namco team at the moment, despite any of the issues with the game being a nightmare to get into now, and they have done a great job of this. It is still very balanced at many different levels of play. It's very, very deep, and that they need to remember they're pretty good at this. And don't take us too literally.
Interesting.
I think the game is poorly balanced, and I think it was poorly. I think it was poorly balanced before Leroy came out. I think it had huge balance issues before Leroy, and then he came out, and now we're in a situation that is even worse. And I think it is poorly balanced because they are making poor decisions. So I think actually listening to a community that is so much better at actually playing the game than they are would actually be a good idea.
I mean, I think for Tekken standards, I think the balancing is really good. I mean, when I look back at Tekken 6 and then even worse, Tekken 5, and then Dinosaur talks about Tag 1, and if you try that game, it is actually unbelievable it was balanced the way it was. When you play a character like Devil, when you play a character like Prototype Jack, those two characters are so far apart vertically on a tier list, you can't see Devil at the top.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh yeah.
looking up
If you want to talk
Claudio.
about unbalance, let's.
Literally.
Sorry, one sec.
Whereas that distance, in Tekken 7, the best to the worst, is much
Yeah.
smaller.
Oh yeah.
The difference between top and mid tier in tag is bigger than the entire cast list by like a significant margin, like that in Tekken 7. Like the entire cast list. As soon as you get outside maybe 10 characters, I mean maybe even like less than that. Like the Devil and Jin versus like a alright mid tier character, like a character that back in the day people would be like, oh yeah, that's a good character. Like that is vastly bigger than the entirety of Tekken 7 could fit into that gap easily.
Yeah.
We don't have the option of playing older versions of Tekken though anymore. We're stuck with 7, right?
You have to try this just to see what it was like. Just pick Prototype Jack in Tag 1 and try and hit someone with his moves. You can't. They have no hitbox.
Like
Fair enough.
just-
But should you be comparing a game that we're playing right now to one that was so much worse than, or do you?
I mean, it's just
Like
to see how far
objectively-
we've come. It's just to see how far we've come, over the years.
Just
Fair
compare
enough.
Tekken 3 Jin versus Hwoarang with Tekken 7 Devil Jin versus Hwoarang. The gulf. I mean, what could Hwoarang do in Tekken 3? What could he actually do?
Unblockable hunting hawk.
All right.
That's it. Yeah, he had a way like his one was not good. Like you could just pick ogre.
No, wait. I was going to say in Dinosaur, if you got to pick in Tekken 3, like, Ancient Ogre or Hwoarang, you'd go Hwoarang every day for that flamingo.
Oh yeah, like his flamingo, which had all those moves from it. He's got a bunch of moves.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a flamingo jab, which guarantees jabs on hit, and that's pretty much it. Like that's his move from flamingo. And
Talking
he's
about
got
Tekken 7, guys, which season do you think is the best balanced one? Season 1, 2, or 3? After the input lag, I want to mention. After the input fix, delay, input lag fix.
are we counting Leroy in season 3?
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
Oh, okay, then 2. For now, 2. But if you're counting Leroy, maybe.
3 minus Leroy.
Yeah, basically.
2 minus
Three.
Akuma and Geese, yeah. Fakum Rum's going to be worse than Leroy, though.
You think? No. He's coming out. He's coming out mid TWT. I doubt it.
Yeah, okay, well, that's
see.
the one reason he might not be broken then, because it's got to hit them in the wallet.
I don't think he's.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's been popular enough. Like I think they
Yeah.
really look at. I think they genuinely look at sentiment analytics when they decide how to like buff characters. Like I think they're gonna be like, people don't seem that jazzed by this guy. Let's just whatever. Just make him alright.
Do the Gigas thing. Bring him out.
Yeah.
People are not interested, so you punish the few people who are by just making him progressively worse and creeping the rest of the roster. Yeah, that could be another way they might go about it.
But yeah, I think probably like. Yeah, I mean, the thing is the balancing for Tekken 7 has not really changed that much. Really, like, I know people talk about all the things that have changed in season 1, 2, 3, but the characters winning tournaments have not changed dramatically. If you look at if you just tune into like a Street Fighter stream or something like that, you can often see people are playing the same people are playing completely different characters than the ones they were when they were first starting to play. Like when they were playing, you'll be like Punk will be playing some other character, whoever like the Street Fighter people are. They've the tier list has completely altered who everyone plays. Everyone has jumped onto different things. In this game, a lot of the time, the people who are playing and winning are the same people, and they're playing the same characters, and the effective characters who are winning tournaments are still borderline the same things, with the exception of Akuma, and that's because people learned how to play him, and not because he's better. He's particularly better. It's because people actually maxed him out. But other than that, it's all just been kind of mostly Geese, Kazumi, a bit of Paul, Steve.
I mean,
I
agree with you, but at the same time, it was pretty interesting to see season 2 drop, and then the complete drop of Jack and Dragunov. I really felt that as soon as season 2 hit, I used to see Dragunov all the time, and then poof, gone. And everyone in tournaments where it felt like everyone had a sub Dragunov, poof, gone. And suddenly you start seeing geese everywhere. So
I think that there's also a thing to be said for like usage, people using characters because they think they're good rather than because they like. If people think a character is good, he will attract good players and he will do well. And I think like
Right.
I honestly think like in season 1, I think Dragunov would have been knocked out of the top tier meta over time due to the way that the game was progressing, because the game became much more about close-up poking, taking minimal risks, and I think he has horrible matchups. Not horrible matchups, but like not like matchups he doesn't win against the top tier characters. Like I don't think he would beat if people had kept on, people kept on playing Kazumi and they found out that like this, like when people maximized Kazumi by finding out that you can press down and then a kick button at the same time and it's actually pretty good, like that revolutionized the character for a lot of people. They were like, oh yeah, down and kick, that's good. Wow, this is the equivalent of maxing out Akuma. Like it goes under things, tremendous. But like Kazumi would have season 1 Kazumi optimized, I think, fucks up season 1 Dragunov. I think Steve has always fucked up Dragunov. These characters would have risen in effectiveness, and I think Dragunov just would have steadily drifted out of like the very, very top tier. I don't think he has good matchups against a lot of the characters that would have been, because I think those characters were still great in season 1 and are still great now, and they're just tough for him. And like the same thing was with Jack. Jack has always been a Gigas type character, where what keeps him competitive is not how powerful he is, it's how easy he is. And once he was made like a bit less powerful, people were like, oh, maybe he isn't actually worth using in tournament. But then Anakin is still doing super well with him. He's still a super easy, clearly very viable tournament character. So I don't actually think like the actual top level balance of this game has changed hugely for a lot of characters. Like I don't think there's many examples of people who were very good who are now not, with the possible exception of like, or people who weren't, who have suddenly, become really, really good due to buffing. I think the only real example I can think of is Katarina, and even she's still all right. She's the only character I think who has literally just been punted right the hell out of tournaments, and good riddance, frankly. I don't like her.
I just have to be a bit rude, I guess. I gotta leave in like 5 minutes, and we are at question 1. So apologies. It's just.
I'll just try and jump in right there with one important thing that I wanted to squeeze in here, because we seem to feel so differently about the balance. And you just talked about, how at the top level it hasn't really changed that much. I think the whole point I was trying to make is that that's not where you should be looking, because that's, like we said in the beginning, 0.000 something of the community. But I mean, the people who are watching this podcast, the people who watch our videos on YouTube, those are the Tekken players out there in the world. And you create a viable balance environment for them, then a great competitive scene is gonna grow out of that. But in terms of like what works when you just want to grind online, I think the balance is, like I said earlier, quite poor, and I think it's gotten progressively worse because of not because of poor attempts at making a better balance environment, but because the balance choices that have been made have been marketing decisions and not focused around creating a fair environment for competitive players. And the Tekken World Tour is this big, show that everybody watches. It's this big like marketing aspect of the game, right? So of course what happens at the tour matters in the eyes of Namco, but our viewers sitting at home, getting, just suffering now because of Leroy. I mean, they're owed an apology and a pretty big nerf in a week from now, in my opinion.
I completely agree with you, but I think they are actually, they see that. It's like Capo back 1-4 in Tag 2 drove me crazy, but Capos didn't win any big tournaments. They weren't, overpowered or too much of a problem at the highest level. But at intermediate, everyone online, complete fucking nightmare. And they removed that before. And then Noctis season 1, Ora, complete fucking nightmare. Didn't trouble pro players at all, but online, Jesus, but they fixed it, removed the tracking. So I think they are on the ball here, but maybe they could do more.
We'll see.
They
when
will care
Leroy
for that
drop.
in the majority. Yeah, they will take care of that. I'm pretty sure they will look for the 99% and not just only 1.1% of competitive players. Yes, because they are looking for the data and they collect the data from the online matches, from ranked and whatsoever, and look for the community, what they are complaining about. And then they just balance it slowly, not totally from one point, but they will slowly, as you have seen, Geese and Akuma are also got nerfed slowly, but they are still really strong. And still many, it became way more, even though it's balanced, quite balanced now, it's more balanced that way. And more people are switching to other characters, consenting to pick other characters since Geese got nerfed and they don't have their fun. But the loyal Geese players are still playing Geese at the end.
I hope you're right. And I'm going to withhold judgment until the league drops. If it's big enough, then I'm going to jump back on Namco's dick like the fucking Sibian on Howard Stern. But if it's not big enough, then they've lost a lot of credibility in my eyes.
Guys, can I ask how everyone is doing for time?
All right.
I've got 1 more hour.
Okay.
I'm fucked.
Okay.
So apologies. I could only reserve 2 hours. And it's too bad. It's always a pleasure, and I'd love to see more of Dinosaur, Mihawk, and Sephi. Frame Whisper I can always do without. No, but always a pleasure. So yeah, I would have wanted to tackle Rangchu's tier list, but I guess I'm just going to have to say good luck to you guys sorting that out. And yeah, again, such an honor to talk to you guys.
Always a pleasure, man.
Great to talk to you again, man.
Always a pleasure.
Take care.
Cheers, buddy.
Take it easy, man.
All right, now we have the layout is dinosaur centralized, and all 4 of us kind of circling like he's the sun.
We're just gonna ask you questions, man. You're in the top.
All right, so this is the dinosaur solar system. I guess let's move on to
Dino show.
Yeah, right. The Dino show.
I'm gonna have to go to bed pretty soon, though, guys. Too. So, do you want to keep going with the tier list, and then maybe I'll drop off when I get really sleepy?
Hey, man, as long as you can push through, it's always a pleasure to have you here, even if you are a dickhead. But yeah, let's carry on, and let's take a look at this. Let's just take a look. I put it in the PDF. So here we go. So Leroy S+, then 2D characters Akuma Geese, Jin. I think that's interesting. You have the 2 most versatile characters in the game sandwiching the 2D characters, but Leroy's clearly the better one. Then Law, Steve. I mean, I personally think Law's a bit overrated. Always been overrated. I think Dino agrees.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's we'll get into that a bit later. I think the top 10 is pretty solid, though. I think the big outliers, as far as I'm concerned, is Lei at A+. What else? Miguel, I don't think it's
Heihachi at C.
Yeah. That's a weird one too. I like probably B at least. I mean, Bears at B, but then again, it's a Rangchu tier list. Noctis, Bears, and Negan aren't better than Heihachi, I think. I mean, Negan, I don't know about Negan. I mean, is he legit a good character in season 3?
Negan is good currently.
Yeah.
I would push him up, I would push him up.
I think he's also good.
Okay.
He's alright. Yeah.
And the other thing that a lot of people take contention with Xiaoyu at C, but I mean, I know Dino certainly thinks she's always been very overrated in Tekken 7. So you probably think she's rightly placed there, right?
Yep.
Do
Absolutely.
you think it's because it's like a matchup thing? Like if you know how to play your character against her, then she becomes so much worse?
Yeah, I think it's Rangchu is he was a Xiaoyu main, was he not? Before he played Bears.
Oh, really?
So I think he actually knows her. Yeah, so he's probably like he might be downplaying her a bit, but he actually like he actually's put Bears pretty high, like
Yeah.
or higher than most people would.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's A, it's a matchup thing, and B, it's just that like she's surprisingly, yeah, I don't think she's very good at top level, because she has there's a sort of looping property with her. Like she has a bunch of properties which connect together in ways which make her like sort of somewhat more ineffective than you might think. In that she doesn't do very much damage with her neutral tools. If she sticks out buttons, they don't actually hit very hard, and she doesn't cover distance very strongly. She can't like close distance with a big, dangerous button.
I always felt like she made up for a lot of her damage because she collects a lot of free stuff on the ground, you know? She hits with something and she gets those little granular hits that are guaranteed in certain situations. And she, she does her damage and then she adds 10, you know, every time kind of.
Yeah, she has really good Okizame, but she's she doesn't really have safe knockdown moves that she can use to get in. Most of her stuff is just like those safe knockdowns and stuff generally come from when she's already got in and she's setting up her offense. She's got both punches and down back one and stuff. But the thing is, yeah, so she has sort of slightly weak neutral and distance closing ability. Like her moves when she closes distance do not do damage. They do not hurt. And so if you're fighting her at this range and both of you pressing buttons becomes more risky for Xiaoyu because it doesn't do a big damage if she closes distance. Like, as opposed to say like Jack is a classic example with Jackhammer. He's just going to do this and covers a lot of distance, does very good damage, sets up an okay guessing game afterwards after the uppercut. Xiaoyu doesn't have anything like that. Generally pretty weak damage. Then secondarily, her moves once she get in are not very like sticky. A lot of the solution to Xiaoyu when she's in your face is just a backdash. If you just backdash, like if she does down forward one is okay on block, but if you just backdash, you're back out again. It's very hard for her to stay on top of someone because a lot of her moves actually push back a reasonable amount. And she doesn't have great lows and throws, like by the standards of this game.
Except when she has rage. And then
except when she has rage, when she's very so the problem is this tends to kind of loop, is that she has weak neutral from the outside, she gets in, she does a couple of things, you backdash back out again, her weak neutral rears its head again. She's constantly being forced to play at her weakest range.
Yeah.
And she can't, unless she has rage, it's sort of hard for her to break people down. So I think she is actually quite a weak character in this game. Like, in some ways, she is, despite the fact that she has tons of on-paper buffs, in some ways she is worse than Tekken Tag 2 Xiaoyu, because Tekken Tag 2 Xiaoyu had unseeable backturn throws and synergized with the tag system very well. She could kill you off a single raw tag. She was very good at raw tagging because she could just raw tag AOP. Like she played well in the system, but Tekken 7 Xiaoyu has been buffed in tons of ways, but somehow not necessarily in ones which matter all that much. So I think she definitely belongs like where Rangchu has put her.
Cool. Yeah. Guys, I'm going to have to sign off. So I just thought, because I saw some people in the chat asking what I think about just my characters, maybe I'll just comment on the few that I play before I go, because that's the one thing I can contribute. But Eliza and Miguel, I think, are bottom tier characters. I think Eliza is quite possibly the weakest character in the game, in my opinion. That's a controversial opinion, possibly, but I think she's complete trash, like incomplete, broken. And her balance changes don't make sense. Miguel has so much potential, but it's like a range issue. We talked about that on one of the other podcasts. Katarina should be lower, one of the lower two tiers. And then I think Zafina and Bob are placed perfectly. And I made like a video last week where I talked about why I'm trying to pick up Zafina right now. I think it's because, in my opinion, we have huge balance issues with the game. And I think Zafina is like balanced right in the middle, in a really cool spot. And so if I'm going to complain about balance, then, I should actually represent my opinion by playing what I consider to be balanced, not play something at the bottom and keep complaining and not run to the high tiers and play Leroy. So I think Zafina is like an example of a character that I really like the balanced design of. But the only thing I really change with Rangchu's tier list in terms of my own characters, I would play is Katarina lower. But apart from that, I think he got it pretty much spot on.
Yeah, a few people think Zafina's top 5 or top 10 or like a top tier character.
I've seen like Arslan started using her all of a sudden. A lot of people started bringing her to tournament, and that was so interesting for me. I don't know if it's like a response to Leroy and his presence now. I don't know if it's an Akuma thing where people are starting to discover the character. So it's actually a super interesting time because I'm watching Arslan now. I'm trying to like understand why he's going to that character now. It's fascinating, but she might have the potential of being much higher. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But my impression right now is she belongs in the middle.
Right, Arslan put her at top 5, didn't he?
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's going to be. I mean, if she's on the tournament circuit after a couple of Leroy nerfs next year, then I'm going to be watching a lot more. Movement is obviously crazy with her, which is fun because it rewards,
right.
Unlike Leroy, where you just stand still and do orbitals,
Which is funny if you think about it, because Zafina's movement is more or less just old tag 2 movement.
Yeah.
It's not super, super duper crazy movement. It's just the old movement that got nerfed within the new game that we got. And so people think like she's some type of goddess, even though she actually just has legit old Tekken movement. And people that started with this game now can feel like what it's like to have actual sidestep and stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy how many things I find myself stepping specifically. More so than the backdash is crazy too, but her whiff punishment isn't that crazy, so she doesn't capitalize. But after the sidestep,
I'm not sure if I see the Zafina being a super good thing. Arslan, the interesting thing Arslan said is that he said that she thought she was really hard to play, which is bizarre to me because, I mean, it's probable that he just knows the character and I don't. But like the core of Zafina to me just seems to be like you just run around for a bit and then you do down forward 1 or down and 3. Like the main thing which makes her good is down and 3. It's a high crashing +4 low that tracks to one side and is only a weird -13 on block in that it's she's fully crouched, but she's in a crouching stance, and so highs will miss her, and a lot of mids will miss her. And it count hit launches. It's one of the best lows in the game.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's crazy.
And
how fast is down 3? Do you know that? It's quite slow. I think.
It's pretty slow. Let's double check. I'm not going to speak out of turn here. Let's just check it. Shout outs to
because you don't see Arslan
22 frames.
22. Okay.
Yeah, so it's risky offline, but then you have her. She has a bunch of good lows that are kind of risky. Back 1+2 is crazy. Goes under mids.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you want to have I think it might be one of the best round enders in the game because it's fast. It just darts in from half screen and it goes under mid. So like if you're at the end of the round and you're trying to keep somebody who's going to try and cheese you with a low out when they want to take the round, what you do is you do a lot of down for the one. You keep them honest with something mid. But if they're going to go under that with the back 1+2, you basically have to hard read and block it and get launched, which is rare. When you can mix up the timing and do it out of a sidestep and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I don't really know what Zafina has that is good apart from down and 3, and kind of down forward 1 to an extent. Like, because I mean, this is admittedly like I said, it's one of those things I probably just don't understand, like the character. But she has crazy movement. But like Elisa also has crazy movement. But Elisa is also a good character. Like Elisa has tons of like really objectively good moves. Like. She covers distance really well. She pokes pretty well up close. Like she just hit.
I think it could be the homing properties and the gap closers. Her gap closers are pretty insane. The 4-4-4 is a homing move closest to gap, and it has like ghost range. She moves forward, but then the foot keeps going, so it's deceptive. The forward forward 2,
Yeah.
fast counter hit launch, 75 damage on the counter hit with the homing property, and then forward forward 1, 3+4. Only really good if the opponent doesn't know what to do, but you have the option of cheesing with Mantis or staying out by holding back. So I think going in, she's super powerful, and because the movement is good, she creates space, and then she capitalizes on that. But yeah, and down for 3/4 for the whiff punish. I can see the argument of her being. She feels, out of all the characters I play reasonably well, she feels probably the most powerful to me right now.
I mean, the question is she top 5 or did Arslan make her top 5?
Oh, we will have to wait and see. I mean, the Pakistani guys made Akuma top 1.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've got the magic touch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, guys, I'm going to sign out. This has been a pleasure.
As always, thank you.
And I've been, shout out to the chat.
Nice to meet you.
As always. Yeah, it was really nice, guys. And I'll see you in the next one, but I got to go make some calls and then hit the sack.
Cheers, man. It's always great to have you. Have a good
night. Same.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, man.
Bye.
Love you, chat.
All right. So, and then it was 4. So the Swedes have left. Two Germans, 2 Brits, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yep. All right. So, okay. I guess let's continue with the tier list. I mean, are there any other contention? I mean, Lee, he's really high. I mean, there's any that struck me as pretty weird. I mean, we kind of notoriously put him at S tier for season 2, and we're still getting shit for that. But
sure.
All right. So, I mean, where would you put Lee? I mean, he's always been kind of a mid-tierish kind of character. I mean, he's a Lee, right? He's never been particularly great, never been particularly terrible.
Yeah, he'd be somewhere in A or B, I think. Probably, I would probably put him in B. I think he's like, this is the thing. I don't think the tier lists in this game matter all that much. They're just like I said. I think ease of use is generally more important, with a few exceptions like Gigas, than like how good you actually like fully are on paper. So I definitely think like he's definitely not better than Bryan. I think Bryan is the other one of the other characters who is much too low on this list.
Yeah, really low. I mean, let's just take a look. He put Bryan in. I put it on the screen. He put Bryan in B tier, and sat right next to Noctis, which I found a bit.
Yeah. I mean, in general, I think. I mean, this is the thing: is that this is a lot of this looks like a combination of like tournament results, but also ease of use tier list. And I think that's why Heihachi is so low. I think Rangchu is not like someone who likes or plays high execution characters. And so like he's really like I don't, this stuff's hard. And he's just put like Bryan, and he's just really put them like a long way down. Like there is like Heihachi worse than Noctis? Worse than Ganryu?
Yeah.
Like I'm just not sure if I like this. Is Heihachi as good as Lily? Like he is definitely, and Gigas? I think he is definitely better than those characters. I might say I would probably like maybe I think I would take Dragunov out of the S tier. I don't think he's that good in this season. I'm gonna say it. I don't know if Mihawk agrees, but
I agree.
Again, I think he has a bunch of hard matchups. They've specifically made some of his easier upper level matchups harder. Like they specifically designed this game so that the Bryan Dragunov matchup would be easier. Because all they did was they gave him a 13 frame full crouch launcher, full crouch punisher. They gave Bryan, they buffed Bryan's down 4, which is the low you use all the time against Dragunov, because he can't 12 frame punish it. And they made Dragunov's while standing both punches barge less punishable by frames, but closer on block so that Bryan can jet upper it now. Like it's like they designed those characters just going like, I want Bryan to be able to beat up on Dragunov more often, because that was one of Bryan's more challenging matchups. But I think in general, yeah, he has hard matchups, and people who were like, oh my god, just running 2 is +6 now. Running 2 is so linear now. It's like there's so many, like he has tough matchups. I think against. I don't think he's great against Geese. I don't think he's great against Kuma. I don't think he's particularly a good matchup against many characters in the top of
Struggles
the
against a lot of
tier
characters.
list. Yeah, but specifically Law and Steve, I think, and Kazumi are all really tough.
Every counter character pretty much is a struggle for Dragunov, because Dragunov initially, if you want to apply pressure with him, you have to use the running 2 or the down 2. Now, as you said, a lot of characters got very new, decent 13 frame punishers, just like Bryan. So that's a risk in itself, using that move against Bryan more often now. The tracking of Y running 2 is nowadays more of a meme than an actual thing. It's very easy to step as compared to what it used to be like in season 1. Then a lot of people that don't play Dragunov actually don't know how much or how less of tracking he actually has. Most of the things that Dragunov players actually use, you can up close, you can easily sidestep to the right. His down forward 1 whiffs, his jabs whiff, his down forward 2 whiffs, his back 2 whiffs, his down back 2 whiffs. The down 2 hits you because it's a low, obviously. A homing will hit you, but by doing a proper sidewalk or a sidestep and then duck, you will beat most of the options that Dragunov will offer you up on close range. And this is why it's a very tough approach to opponents that are very knowledgeable against this character. And yeah, it's just characters that have very good counter hit tools, such as Steve, Law, Kazumi. Insert any character with a magic 4, just give him a hard time.
I think it's specifically, if you like specifically characters with a magic 4 or something like a magic 4, and a really a powerful punisher from full crouch, because you just like, this is like the first time I saw it was I went to we might have all, like all of us, like I know Sefi was there when I went to the ultimate tournament where Malgu and Sunchip were, and there was Malgu versus Nobi, and that matchup was hard for Nobi, you could tell, and it still is, because Law versus Dragunov, because he just did 4 or jabs, and Dragunov was like, well, I can't fight these.
Yeah.
And then he goes for the low chop, and he got while standing 1-2'd. And that dynamic has changed. Like that dynamic is the same with like Kazumi, Steve. They all hit hard on down 2, and they all just do standing 4 if he does a high or a mid. So yeah, I think his matchups keep him out of top tier, and that might be controversial. And I think that again, they nerfed Dragunov a bit in the post season 3 patch. And I think this is an example of listening to the community, and the community not really knowing what they were talking about. This is another example of, like, because there could be tons of people just like, oh yeah, he's the best character in the game. He might be better than Akuma now, and he's just going to dominate everything. And then like you just played against the character, and you're like, but he's so linear. Like even when he wasn't, these were tough. Like it was. But he's got nerfed. He might get nerfed again. Who knows? But he's like, again, like a risk of like groupthink. People saying, "Oh, this character's too much. He's like it's +6, so good." But he's just not that good. He's just fine. He's good. He's just a good character. That's it. He's certainly not like broken. And I would say, not top tier anymore.
I agree.
Let's go back to the list. So what? Leroy, Akuma, Geese. Now, Geese, when season 3 first came out, we thought he might have, so many changes to the frames on, down forward 1, down forward 2, a lot of added frames, but then they gave him the craziest comeback potential in the game with the new move and with the scaling on the Deadly Rave. So you get 25 points all the time. Which if you tack that onto the end of a combo, it gives him the bar none, the most powerful comeback potential in the game.
It's
So-
it's not 25%. It's not 25 points all the time. That's the
Really?
crazy thing about
Yeah.
it. No, it's got rage art scaling on it as well.
Mm.
It's
at
only got
least
rage
25.
art. It's at least 25. If you have one
That's the
pixel,
thing.
if you have 1 pixel of life left, if Geese has 1 pixel of life left and he does it, that final chunk is doing 37.
What? Oh wow! Oh wow! I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, do you think he's? I mean, Rangchu put him, top 3. I mean, do you agree?
I still think he has the best, really good fundamental tools. Like his down forward 1, even though it got nerfed, it's still good. Like his down forward 2, his homing move is still useful. Countered launchers, screws on the wall. Besides from that, his back 3-2, you don't see that often anymore since he's got a 2 forward 1. If he goes into the meter, if he's using meter, he still gets from 2 forward 1 a normal hit launcher. So this is really strong. And most people using 2 forward 1 instead of back 3-2 as a whiff punisher, for example, or as a tool to launch the opponent. So he's still really strong with his tools. And even though his meter got nerfed, he still is okay or till good with his fundamental tools. His jabs are still one of the best jabs in the game. Like his down 4 still tracks pretty well, fast, countered launcher, does decent damage. And I think he's still really strong. But he can't use he can't waste his meter as before.
That's
he
the
needs
thing.
to be way more patient. He's way more difficult to play, but still, if you know how to play with him, he's really strong.
Yeah, they really destroyed his meter gain for season 3, especially for when he's taking damage. And we were thinking like season 3 Geese, is he still a threat? Is he still a top level threat? But the results definitely show that he is. I mean, Chikrin and TWT, of course, he mostly used Geese. I mean, Akuma specifically for Ulsan. But basically Geese won. Geese basically won TWT.
I wanted to ask you about. You said that law is over, not you.
Seems overrated.
Be.
I mean, I think Dino and I both agree on the reasoning for law being overrated.
Can you explain that, please? I don't. I have another opinion, but I want to know your opinion about
that. Let's compare Shaheen and Law. I mean, so Shaheen is placed in A+, Law is placed in S. I mean, you see a lot more Shaheen in tournaments, and he generally does a lot better than Law. And on paper, Law is better than Shaheen in every way imaginable, but Shaheen is much easier to play, and he has long limbs, whereas Law has short, stubby limbs, and particularly his down forward 1 range isn't as good as Shaheen's. So Shaheen having stronger fundamentals and being easier to play counts for a lot. I mean, Dino, is that basically?
Yeah. I think there's one area where Shaheen is definitely better than Law, and that is High Crush. No, just in general. So of the 3 Law characters, so there's Real Law, Flamboyant Law, and Arabic Law. They're all like strong at different things. Like Flamboyant Law has the strongest High Crush. He has down 3. Arabic Law has the second strongest High Crush with down 3. And Real Law has terrible High Crush. So like you can see, this is why like Knee will counter. I think this is why Knee will counterpick Steve with Law. I mean, sorry, Law with Steve. He will always play Steve against Law players, which a lot of people thought was like a decent matchup for Law, because he can launch Punish Duck 2. He's got Magic 4. He's got Punch Parry. Blah blah blah. All this stuff. You're like, oh, yeah, it's fine. It's not. because like when it comes down to being a very, very patient match, Law, the match becomes like Steve is just going to do like jabs while standing one, back one, instant flicker, instant peekaboo stuff, this kind of thing. But when Steve wants to mix Law up, he can poke with down 2 and instant peekaboo down 1 and not risk getting magic forward. So he can always slightly edge the life lead. Law cannot do this. Law does not have a good high crush move to attack with. So like when we saw in versus fighting low high, he played Law against knee Steve and he just got destroyed. He just couldn't win ever, couldn't get in. He switched to Shaheen and he did way, way better, and he very nearly won. Like it came down to the last button that they fought, because he was able to open knee up with down and 3, because and back 1 became not just a counter. He couldn't just back 1 him out of all offense when he came in. So I think Law has struggles against a lot of the top tier characters for this reason. I think also he does a lot of damage on the wall, but I don't think his mix-ups afterwards are very scary. Like as far as like many other characters go, I think he's actually one of the weaker characters in terms of his wall game. Like again, Steve is way more scary. Like you take a big damage combo against Steve, and you're also guessing for your life. Against Law, you take a big damage combo, and then you take a down back 3 and you run away. It's much more easy to play a patient, conservative game against Law, and it is. I also don't think Law is very good against like strong. I just don't think he has. His benefit is that he has no terrible matchups. He has no one that he's super bad at against. I don't think. I don't think he has any. I don't think he has many characters I think he's actually super good against. I think he's just like just okay. Just does well against. Can't really snowball rounds particularly well. So if you play against Triton, for example, Sephi, like you can have very, very slow paced matchups because Law cannot really snowball a match in the same way that, like, say, even characters like Bryan can. Bryan can. He does big damage, big wall combos, huge damage mix-ups, like very scary. And I don't think Law is the same as that. You can play the slowest pace you want against him, and it's not. It doesn't, like, he can't overwhelm you that much. So I think he's like, again, he's good. Like I think there's lots of good characters. But I don't think his tournament results are very like. I don't think his tournament results reflect a particularly like devastating character. There's one guy who does really well with him, and everyone else tries to play him and then goes back to Shaheen, like Gen and AK and Low High, and they're all just like, "Oh, am I going to play Law?" No. They might play Law for like maybe against Raven or something because they want to just both kick things. But I think so. Yeah, I think he's just, in the end, he's just like a good character. He just, I mean, he does have good matchups. He has good matchups against Dragunov and Jin and so on. But, I don't think he's like against Akuma and Steve. I think who will probably, in my opinion, I think Akuma, Steve, and probably Leroy are the best characters in the game. And I don't think he does particularly well against them or against like a lot of the other characters. I don't think he's particularly great against King. Yeah, well, that's my reasoning.
Interesting. Very interesting facts that points that you mentioned about that, because I think Law has got everything. Since you said he doesn't have a high crush, actually he got down 1 as a high crush too, if you want to mention that. So this is not the best one, but he has this option to evade these moves. But he's got good counter tools like his 4, his 3, and so on. Good counter tools. His 4 1+2 can be used to open up the opponent slowly, like 4 1+2. Countered launcher plus on block, quite fast with 20 frames, I think. And the opponent is close to you, so he doesn't. You don't give him much space, which is important for Law. He has an excellent whiff punisher, like 3+4 is to one of the best whiff punishers, in my opinion, in the game. 14 frame fast, has a really good range. So, and his slow pokes are decent, like down back 3. It tracks pretty well, is fast, gives you quite frame advantage. Yeah, crushes the opponent, exactly. His counter tools like 1, 2, 3. If you are, if the opponent's on the wall, you can just throw it out without being scared to maybe to get a wall spread move. Compared to Dragunov's 1, 2, 1, for example, you don't need to confirm it. You just throw it out, and it's just -5. Like you can build, even if you're -9, it's not that much. You can still pressure the opponent if you like to, but you don't need to. You can also move and just bait for another attack. And his downfall 1 compared to Shaheen, okay, I understand. It doesn't track well, but still the properties are still really good, and the recovery is also decent. Like if you still need to dash in to make moves to dash in gives the effect that your moves are tracking better. So you still need to use it anyway, even though you're using it with Shaheen, Miguel, or whatever character. You still need to dash in to make these moves that they track. So besides from that, his homing move is really good. Back 4, 14 frame homing, decent range, still strong. And his standing punishers are really great, 15 frames, 13, and leads you to a lot of possibilities. And this makes him overall great character, I think. So of course, I know what you mean with on the wall. It's not that scary because Steve is more scary, true, but still he can chip the damage. And if with down back 3, for example, or down back 3, and then if your opponent doing one mistake, he can easily do wall splat. So he has an answer to everything. He likes on range, that's true. His range is not the best, or he's considered to be a smaller character, smaller than Shaheen. But his tools are still really good to close up the gap. Like you can be really fast on close range with Law, and on close range you still got the slide to scare the opponent. Like I think he's really strong.
Yeah, I think he's strong. I just think there are there are many strong characters in the game. I don't think he stands out to me a lot for how good he is. I think I remember like when they asked Arslan who the Pakistani sort was top tier back in season 2, and he just didn't say, and he just didn't mention Law, and everyone was like, didn't mention Law. And and he put Akuma as top tier, and people were like, Akuma over Law? And like in the end, he was totally right. He was like that character's seen way more. But yeah, I think like I would also like the Pakistani players, they're very, they're clearly very cheap, and they know what is they're good at like picking pretty cheap characters, and they never seem to really like Law that much. It might just be because and I think he's like I said, he's good. Like if you're a Law player and you should win, and you are playing someone who is worse than you should beat people that you're better than, and you should you're going to lose to people that you're worse than most of the time. Like he can beat everyone. But he can also lose to like lots of other characters. I think he's like not great against. Weirdly enough, he's like not great against Hwarang, which is strange. And I don't know why, but it's just not a hard matchup. It's one of those strange ones. I mean, it doesn't feel like a tough matchup. Maybe because he can't beat his neutral doesn't have the range to oppress Hwarang. I'm not sure why, but every time I've played it, and when I've seen people playing Hwarang versus Law in the UK, it's pretty even. So yeah, I mean he's a good character. Like, I'm not saying like, but there's lots of characters I think are around as good as him. I don't think there's a big difference. I don't think there's any real difference between S and A plus in this tier list in Rangchu's one.
I see.
I mean,
Interesting.
the standout thing about Law is his 3+4, right? It's almost unquestionably the best 14 frame punish in the game. Any debates about that? I mean, if there was one thing that really stands out about Law in Tekken 7, it's just 3+4, right?
That thing that he missed in the previous Tekken, like in Tekken 6, he hadn't had that. In Tekken Tech 2 as well. So his 3+4 is a exceptional good addition in Tekken 7 that he hadn't had before. Like a good long whiff punisher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it is good. It's obviously incredibly good. But it's also worth noting that like it doesn't really synergize with a lot of wall combos very well. Like it's hard to convert both like that move into Law's wall combo a lot of times due to the way that he has to wall carry from it. And get and because it has an early screw, like the damage is not the highest, but it's still the best. It's still the best 14 frame in the game. It's just not the most damaging one, but it's still like you can punish Heihachi's 4-4-2 with it almost every time. Like that's all you need.
They even increased the range on it in season 2, I think, which is why for a time he could. Yes. I mean, that's why for a time he could get a full combo off of Dragon Tail. I remember everyone was flipping their shit over that for a while, and they reverted it.
True, I remember. It was a thing.
That was a thing, a very short-lived thing. I mean, looking at Rangchu's tier list, I mean, I personally think Elisa is top 10, but I mean, he put her in A+, still very strong. King, maybe. I mean, King seems very, very strong, but again, he's in A+.
I would switch Elisa with Dragunov, I think.
Yeah.
If anything.
Yes, I agree.
Me too.
Yeah, Elisa, Dragunov sounds about right. Marduk, very strong tournament character, I think. He can just kind of decimate you off a few correct guesses.
Yeah, he's really threatening.
Very explosive once he has the momentum. Very, very explosive.
That's always been Marduk, though.
Yeah. Wasn't that poke? He isn't the poke heavy character, but character who, if he gets a counter at launch or launch, he will annoy you.
Definitely. Yeah. You can't. Yeah, and he can turn around the matchup so easily. I think of the only characters which jump out to me are Ganryu and Hwoarang. I'm not sure if they belong with characters like Devil Jin and Claudio and Raven and Marduk. I don't think these two are as good as him, as those guys. I haven't played against Ganryu in Tekken 7, but he looks too similar to Tekken Tag 2 Ganryu for me to think that he's particularly good. The only thing I think that he has is particularly good is his rage drive, which is very good. But yeah.
But his rage drive is kind of seeable or not?
Is it? I can't. It doesn't look seeable at all to me. But like maybe, I don't know. I haven't, like I said, I haven't really played against him much. It looks.
Since it's 23, 24 frames, if you are waiting for that, you can react to that.
With the blue flash as well. I mean, I haven't played him.
This gives you additional effect to react on this move, like there was flash and then the low is obvious that it's coming. So
one thing that kind of stuck out to me on Rangchu's tier list is that he has like Devil Jin in A and Kazuya in B and Heihachi in C, and if you want to include him, Jin in S. And to me, the Mishimas seem really close together in season 3, closer than they've ever been. I kind of clump them together when I think Kazuya's possibly the best Mishima now by a small margin. But I just don't see why he'd put them so far apart on the tier list.
That's a good question, though.
Yeah. I think they. Yeah, I mean, I think Heihachi is just misplaced. He's just too low. But I think.
Why would you consider him to place Heihachi?
I think I would put him in A. Maybe I would even put him in A+. But again, he has the he has a bit of the Dragunov problem in that some of his matchups are are not very good. I don't think he's very good against Steve and Law specifically, because they have much better poking than him, and they have consistent punishment on his forward forward 2.
But they also have way better lows than Heihachi.
Yeah.
Heihachi is the worst lows, probably the worst lows in the game.
Yeah, I mean, he's always had the worst lows in the game, though. I mean,
True.
he's always had bad lows, so I think it's okay. Like, I think he can be good without great lows, because he has been. He was the second best character in DR, and his lows were even worse in that game. And so I think it's possible. Like, I think if you play him well with strong neutral, I don't think he needs big lows, and he still has unreactable full crouch down forward 4. And he still has single hell sweep if you really want to risk it. I think he's just he's just very, very hard to play. He's very hard to play at top level. We were just talking about Heihachi, Mihawk.
Yeah. Sorry, I was at the bathroom. So.
No worries. What do you think of? Well, we're talking about Heihachi, your character, actually, and Dino thinks he's very low placed. You said you'd put him in A+.
I think I put him around A+. I don't know either one of those, but I think he's very good. I think he might be the hardest character in the game to play at top level.
So A+ would make him better than Deviljin and Kazuya, you think?
Yeah, I think that's okay. He has a down forward 1. I think down forward 1s are useful. He has the best down forward 1 out of all of them. I think like he doesn't have the comeback potential that they do. Like he has to be like Law, he has to control the pace of a match very strongly. Because he can't win. It's harder for him to come back if the other person just gets a life lead and keeps him out. But I think his down forward 1 and 1 back 2 and I think he controls space the best out of all of them. I think he's always been a tough head-to-head matchup for Kazuya for that reason. He can just down forward 1 him to death. But yeah, so I think I still think he's one of the worst characters in the game to try and play in a tournament because he's so difficult. He's just you need to be crouch cancel electric things. You need to have extremely good. You need to play him as a timing character. He is only a timing character, like almost pretty much. It's just like if the other person's going to block, you cannot mix them up with mids. You just a lot of the time you need to just force them into the wall with Wavedash and forward and 4 and stuff, and then like get them from there with like maybe full crouch down forward 4 or single hell sweep. But yeah, so I think he's definitely he's the least explosive like comeback Mishima, but I think he has the strongest. I still think he's really good. It's just tough matchups and super hard.
Yeah, so my opinion is Heihachi is not a bad character per se, but I think compared to the other Mishimas, he's the worst for numbers of reasons. Of course, he has the best down forward 1. I mean, his down forward 1, 13 frames, -1 is +9 to +10 on hit. Sometimes it's +10, so you get a guaranteed 1-1-2 on hit. Pretty crazy. But if the issue is that a lot of his things are, how should I put it? He doesn't have like up close. You can, since we're talking about high level in tournaments and stuff, you can option select a lot of things that Heihachi has by doing sidestep blocks or sidewalks. There is no real big threat. He has the low hell sweep, the single one, which is +5 on hit, which is really good, which opens up to a lot of mix-ups. He has the 1 back 2, and what I like about Heihachi in that sense is that a lot of moves that he has on itself are really good because it opens you up for a lot of mind games with the opponent. You can play a lot of mind games. You can do a lot of down forward 1s, and then the moment he presses, you can do a sidestep electric, you can do backdash electric, you can do all of that. Doing that is really difficult since I main Heihachi. It's really tough to find the sweet spot between not overextending or between extending, overextending, and finding the right time to punish someone. On top of that, him only having down 4 as a really like solid viable low right next to single held sweep is an issue, I think, because other than that, every single low that Heihachi has is launch punishable. His down back 3 is like -17, even though you've got to use it sometimes. His down back 2 is a reactable low that is 23 frames quick, launch punishable. Held sweep, if you block it as well, it's launch. I mean, it launches on counter hit, but it doesn't do as much as far as it only gives frame advantage. And for other Mishimas, they get a lot of, especially like compared to Kazuya in this game, where like he knocks you down and puts you into a vortex. Does held sweep, dashes up, does another held sweep, does forward, it can mix you up really well. With Double Jin, you get a full combo. With Heihachi, you don't essentially have the need to duck a lot against him, just because there is no real big threat to duck against him. Therefore, his forward 4, which on grounded gives a guaranteed down forward 1-2, isn't that big of a threat. Besides that, you can walk it, you can stay out of range. His down forward 1 doesn't have as much range as people make it out to be. Down forward 1 into down forward 1, you can easily backdash with Heihachi, you can step it. A lot of things where people do like a plus move into a down forward 1, you can just backdash. So I don't know. I agree to an extent that I don't think Heihachi is a bad character, but I personally don't think he's A+, and I don't think he's the best Mishima. He's very, very good at pressuring the opponent, and according to the frames and stuff that he has, he's really good at controlling the neutral as well. But actually getting damage with him is tough, I think, because once you have the launcher, you have a lot of damage, but opening up the opponent is way, way harder with Heihachi compared to Kazuya and Devil Jin, which is why I think it's tough with this character to, first of all, play, and then furthermore to win properly. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I want to mention that I think the Tekken 7 system is not good for Heihachi. I think the bounce system was much better because the bounce system gave him better combos. The wall carry was better. In this game, his wall carry really sucks. I think back forward 2-1 is pretty much the only thing that you can do with him. His low parry combos suck compared to other characters, whereas other characters can easily take you to the wall or just do a shit ton of damage, whereas Heihachi can't really do that. And a lot of things that he kind of, where I was looking forward to, his wild sending Punisher is not good as well. They gave him a new wild sending Punisher that is 18 frames quick or slow, no matter how you want to word it, -14 on block. Every wild sending Punisher that he has is launch punishable. Wild sending 4/4 is launch punish. Wild sending 1 for Bryan is launch punish. Wild sending 3 1+2 is launch punish for Bryan. So I just think that it's a lot of commitment with Heihachi, and it's a lot of risks that you have to take with the character. You have to be 100% sure that the things you're going to do are going to hit. Otherwise, you're either going to hit a lot of damage or you're just not going to do anything. And this is why I think a lot of people don't really pick the character a lot, me included in tournaments. I think I've tried it a lot of times, and I found myself struggling with the character in tournaments, whereas when I picked Dragunov, I was doing much, much better, just because the barrier is not there as much. And I think Heihachi overall, or the tag system fit him better than the Tekken 7's screw system. So I think even though he's a good character, I personally believe that Kazuya and Devil Jin are better as Mishimas. That's what I personally think.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, he's as I said, I think he's the hardest Mishima to play, definitely. I think. I mean, he's the easiest at low level, but I think he's the hardest at top level, because you can't just sweep people to, it's very hard to mix people up with correctly with him in any significant way. So I think he's very, like we talked about how Tekken is a timing game. I think because Heihachi is the hardest Mishima to sidestep, and he has the safest pokes. He has forward 1, back 2, down forward 1, and back 4, and this stuff. I think he's the hardest to move against, but he's also the easiest to just block against. So you really have to oppress people's timing to win with him, and it's very hard to play a timing game in tournament. I think it's very, very, very hard. Yeah, because it's one thing to 50-50 people in tournament, like go low or high, and then figure out how they respond in that way. To learn someone's timing in tournament is almost impossible. You have very few exchanges to do it in. So yeah, I think it almost doesn't matter because like I said, I think difficulty probably in the practical terms, difficulty matters more than how good you actually are. And Heihachi's difficulty is so high that he's just not a practical tournament pick for almost anyone. I think unless JDCR played him all the time, I think would be the only
seriously, I don't think JDCR would win a world stack class tournament with Heihachi. I don't think he would, with the issues that Heihachi has, as opposed to Devil Jin and Kazuya. I don't think he would win a world stack class tournament with Heihachi. Even though I would love to see it, but realistically, I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't know. I think he could do it. Yeah. I think he could. I think he was always good against characters like Law and Steve and so on, like against the kind of, because I think the advantage of him is that he plays a very, very different game to almost anyone else. Like with his timing and his whiff punishment, he's a very very, very unique Mishima in how he plays. But I think because he's been playing Dragunov and stuff, I don't think his Dragunov is like expressive of. I don't think his Dragunov is very different from other Dragunovs in the way that his Heihachi is different from other Heihachis. Like his Dragunov is just a very good Dragunov. His Heihachi is completely different to anyone else's. Like completely different. No one else can whiff punish or like play like he can. So I would still be interested to see it, but like I said, it's a huge amount of effort to play Heihachi. I don't think anyone should downplay that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Apart from online, obviously, where you're just going to do down back 2 and forward 2, and no one's going to punish it. Like, but like at certain levels. But
there's a big difference between online and offline.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, are there any other contentious picks in this tier list? I mean, for me, one thing I want to talk about, maybe if you guys have time, is Negan, because a lot of people think he's really good in season 3, and I don't see it. I mean,
it's just all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can say compared to the previous season, his down back 2 is less punishable. Like it's just -14.
Right.
For example, now he's got from his from his stance a low, so he can mix up the things. He's got a normal hit, power crush, homing, launcher from stance, which is also a good thing. His wide standing punishes became better, like his 12th rank wide standing 1-2, or
You got a lot of stuff.
It's like 32 damage, and he goes into the in his stance. He can go into his stance after his 1-2, which is also really impressive. Like if imagine Miguel can go 1-2 into stance, would be crazy. It would do such a big difference. He got like that, and his damage is decent. His movement is awesome as a male character. His movement is one of the best. His sidestep is really good. This makes him a really good character compared to season 2.
I think he just got really good overall buffs that where he was struggling before. Like as you said, very good wild sending punishment now. More moves that transition into stance. A very good low stand. A very good low out of his. What's the stance called? Intermediation stance again. Then he has his down back 2 got buffed it's now minus 14 only.
14, yeah.
Yeah, now it's only minus 14, even though it's still a C below, but still can throw it out here and there. Yeah, and then just certain property changes where like certain things just now naturally launch and stuff. And just overall a really good fundamental basic character that has a lot of good plus frames on him, and that just does really well overall, I think. Not as good as the upper tier characters, but still is in a much better spot compared to what he used to be.
I mean, wasn't tracking always his issue? I mean, his ability to approach, and
okay, so his ability to approach is sort of
4-4-2,
changed.
right?
4 both punches.
Yeah.
It's now normal hit launcher, pretty hard to sidestep.
Right.
His tracking is okay. Like, it's just like the main things are still that he's an up close poking character without a magic 4 or anything like that.
Right.
Doesn't have a magic 4 is the main thing. Everything, like, he has to, unless he's hitting push, which is sort of risky versus movement. The tracking is decent, the range is decent, but it doesn't do anything on normal hit, and you might get sidestep. And if you do, you die. It recovers horribly. And his magic, his quote unquote magic 4 is 4-2, which is not, nothing. It's nothing special. So he doesn't do very much damage on counter hit, which means he's going to have to be he just has to sort of peck away, move. He has very good whiff punishment. But yeah, he's not quite able to brawl out top characters, I think, head to head, because they do more damage on counter hit than he does. He's not really gonna, and it's not going to be that easy for him to keep characters like Marduk or Bryan or big explosive characters out of the game because his lows aren't hugely damaging. It's mostly he has to sort of death of 1,000 cuts you until you miss and he does down forward 2. So I think he's fine. Like, he definitely shouldn't be any better than he is, because again, he is super easy and he's really obnoxious to play against.
Yeah.
It's just like a collection of jab strings and down forward 1 strings, and he's not fun. He's not fun to play against.
As you said earlier, yeah.
Yeah. They shouldn't make him any better than this. Because he's really easy. He does the same combo after everything, aka the Leroy syndrome. It's all just jump knee down from 4-2, blah de blah. It's always the same combo. It's after low parry, it's after floats, it's after everything. And yeah, he's pretty boring. But he's decent. But he's as good as he needs. He's good as he should ever be. Don't make this character any better, please.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah. Cool. I mean, unless there's any other character you really want to talk about on this list.
Lei deserves to be up a bit, I think. That would be it. He's not that bad. He's fine. Back 2 is a good move.
Miguel.
Yeah, Miguel. He put Miguel as the worst character in the game. So
yeah, I don't think he's that, and I don't think Lei's. So they both have to be set upper, and definitely Miguel is a character who has got almost everything, but not maybe in the best way though. His downfall 1 is excellent still from the range, even though it's -2. The range is really good. His whiff punishers, even though they are not, they are risky, they are or slow, they are still decent. And he's got the keep out tools like the magic back one, but his jabs are not that great though. But besides from that, he's a character who's got good 15 frame launcher, good wide standing punisher. Okay, not till it starts with 14 frames, like his launcher, wide standing 2-4 is a decent launcher, but still 13 frame, his wide standing punishers are not that good. But besides from that, he's got almost everything. So, but not that great though. And his damage is good.
Where would you rank him in this chart?
I would rank him A or maybe B, but actually more like B.
Yeah. And I would put Bryan up as well. Like Bryan doesn't belong in B. That's crazy. No one thinks he's there.
Yeah, I don't think that either. yeah.
Where would you rate Bryan, Dinosaur?
I would put him in either. I think A plus and S are pretty similar. I think I would put him in there. I think he's one of the best characters in the game, but he's just hard. Like he has tons of weird, like his matchups are weird because of his jabs and his down forward 2-1, and he needs to like not necessarily down forward 2-1, but like he has lots of strange matchups like Raven, where you'll just things will miss all the time on her because of who she is, and Kazumi. Like Kazumi's down forward 1 beating his jab straight up is very tough. I think he can win every matchup pretty much, and he does lots and lots and lots of damage.
When you say jabs, you mean he has one of the highest hitboxes on his jab?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Kazumi's down forward 1 will go under his jab in certain situations. Like,
really?
Oh yes, it's great.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
So you have to like every matchup is very, very specific for him because you have to be like a lot of the time you have to say how much can I use jabs against this character? How much do they actually work like a normal character's jabs? So against like every character's down forward 2 will always go through will always work like pulls against him. Will always go through his jabs at almost every frame advantage. So any character with a generic down forward 2, you have to say, okay, I have to think about down forward 2 and never jab when down forward 2 is coming. So he has very like his matchups. You need to think about like how much can I play? How much do I need to like change my move list? His range drive and back 1 are very weak against Raven because of her stance like this. The hitbox actually doesn't connect on her a lot.
She stands back, right?
Yeah. So like he has a lot of like subtle things about his matchups, but he also does 1,000,000 points of damage on lots of things and is really hard to run away from. And he's like he controls space very well. He just hits hard and he's really good. Like he's really good. People super downplay him. And he's just difficult to play. It's difficult to have everything working. It's difficult to have taunt working and count hit 4 working and back 4 Mac breaker working and while standing 3-4 combos and like dash jabs and like everything else. Like it's very hard to keep. You've got to keep a lot of plates spinning in the air to play him properly. And he has his movement's only okay. Like he's got an okay backdash and a pretty crap sidestep. But if you can keep it all working, he's super good. He does tons of damage. Like he's he's just there's a lot of matchups where you just have to survive until you can do Bryan things. But if you can if you can survive until you can do Bryan things, you'll be having a great time.
Right. I never actually realized his jabs were that bad in terms of hitbox interaction. I mean, I'm not a Bryan player.
But it still has a good range.
Yeah. Like they're still
the range is good, but it's high.
There's still very good range. Yeah. So the only character like him is Marduk. I don't know if Marduk is as bad, but Marduk's left jab also has a really super high high hitbox.
Interesting.
All right then a lot of people are saying Asuka's way too low on this list, but Asuka has traditionally been a character that's really, really obnoxious at intermediate all the way up until the highest level of play, and then just her ability to not punish minor whiffs very effectively really doesn't work in her favor at the highest level of play, essentially. I mean,
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, he placed in B. I mean, because this is from Rangchu's perspective at the highest level of play. Of course, in an offline setting. So Asuka B, is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. that as well.
B or A, one of those two, I think.
Yeah.
Also with
Since
Bob,
she has got a
B or A. Those two characters either go one up or stay where they are.
yeah.
Yep. I agree.
Cool. And then unless chat, there's someone else you want us to really discuss. I mean, the one character I was a bit like when he got well, this is Claudio basically. In season 2, he got a bunch of changes and everyone thought he was amazing, and it turns out he was better, but still pretty average. And then in season 3 again, he got a bunch of changes. He got higher range on bigger range on his hop kick and the back 3 extension. People thought he's amazing again, but is he actually really good now, Claudio?
I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
He's-
that as well.
I think he's good. I don't think he's amazing. Again, he's another character where I don't think his lows are good at all. I don't think down 4-3 for what it does is they buffed it in this season. I was just like, but that move sucks. And I mean, you saw my comments on the change list. I was just like, but all these moves suck. I think the main thing he has is that his back one, his homing move, is really super good.
Yeah.
What
And
about
just
forward then? You didn't mention that.
It's the same to me. I don't think it's changed.
+6 now on hits.
Sidestep
Yeah.
4. But
I
no
don't
one
really
was
think
pressing.
that means anything.
Well, but people pressing
Yeah.
buttons after sidestep 4 in season 2. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
It's just no one ever pressed. It was like Bryan's down 2 getting changed. No one ever pressed buttons after down 2 on hit. No one ended up caring. No one ever pressed buttons after sidestep 4. I don't think it changed it much. I think his actual change that made the difference is, weirdly enough, they just made and this was still a good move. Back one is now is one of the most the best homing moves around, because he steps back after doing it, and it's very hard to get any kind of pressure on him at all.
Right.
Meaning he can sort of control horizontal space very well, and so this he can sort of use to push, and running 2 to push you to the wall, and then he does down forward 3 into hit confirm,
right.
or you have to just wait there to get sidestep forward.
Right.
And all this is fine. I think all this is good. It's all okay. But he still has pretty weak lows. I think you need to really make someone block in order for them to get sidestep forward. Is the problem in neutral, not by the wall. They need to be super passive.
Yeah.
And I think he just has to. I don't think he does. He still doesn't have a down forward 1. He's got back 3 is better now. But I think he's just good. It's just he's a good character. He's really easy. He's really easy to play. I was talking to Yoplix about this, and he was just saying one of the main things. Yeah, you don't mess up with this character. You just have a few things you want to do. You just do hop kick to whiff punish, homing move, and then down forward 3-1 and jabs. Super good jabs. We're talking about Bryan having a super high hitbox. Claudio's jab hitbox is down by the floor. He can 1-2 Anna out of her roll after her from Chaos Judgment. He can just do 1-2 jabs and it will knock her out of it. His jab hitbox is super low. They're super not they're very close to neutral. They're -1 to 0 on block. His jabs, I think. So he's really got a few simple, really easy tools. Pretty good tournament character, but he doesn't snowball matches. He doesn't if he's on a bad life deficit, it's very hard for him to come back. And I think he's a good tournament character, but I think he's worse in long sets because he's a bit too his simplicity is a big strength.
Makes sense. Okay. So, guys, are there any characters you want to talk about? I mean, we can't obviously go through the whole cast, but is there any characters on this list which you think are particularly oddly placed, or you just want to? Is something you're really itching to talk about?
None that jump out.
I think, I believe that just from looking at it, I think Josie is better than where Rangchu put her at. But yeah, other than that, it's mostly all right. I don't think she's only a B character currently. She's got a lot of good buffs. She's very annoying to play against in general. I guess it comes down to how patient you play the matchup against her, but I think she could be better than the characters that are on the same list for the fact that she has a lot of pressure, a lot of counter hit tools, very good punishment, with punishment, a very good down forward too, a very good magic 4. Basically, for the most part, a safe down 4. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on this character. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree.
Yeah, I think she's good. I think she's a bit unstable because she doesn't have a down forward 1 or something like that. She doesn't really have like a safe way of like opening people up, because her down forward 4 has a big hitbox, but you can sidestep it, and if she misses down forward 4, she's dead. Like she's just like, that's one of the big things, is like it's very hard to whiff punish down forward 1s. So she's a bit more commitment heavy and gamble heavy than she looks.
Yeah.
But I think she's strong. Like she's, again, a character that shouldn't be any better than she is, because she's pretty strong. She's pretty easy to play. You can close distance just by doing like huge range, crouch dashing low to hit you from miles away if you're trying to turtle. Like she can play like big read YOLO Tekken. Definitely shouldn't be like much better than she is, because she's pretty good. And yeah, like I said, pretty easy. And good, very, very good, very, very good block punishment as well, obviously. For everything, like almost one of the best in the game, like easily.
Yeah, I would also say a hard read character. If you are having a hard read, you will get a big countered launch, and besides from that, not the down forward 1 is a big problem for her. But if she would have it, she would be too strong, I think. So it's good not to have a down forward 1. She has a 3, which is 13th rank, but it's linear. It is really minus some blocks, so you can't compare it to a usual down forward 1 as a poke. But yeah, she's more designed to be a counter character, and with the right guesses, you will get your damage. But this fits to her pretty well. But this doesn't make her so strong, because she needs to do hard reads for
it. Yeah, I agree. All right. Then, guys, we've been at this for over 3 hours now, so I thank you so much for taking the time. You know, it's really appreciated. It's great to have you here, Phil, and you know, Aria Mihawk as always. It's it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and
Thanks for
yeah,
having us,
love to talk to you guys again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys, chat, thanks for tuning in. And that was Wavedash 5. Thank you very much. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Take care.
Cheers.